Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. It is 5:30 on March 6, 2025, and this District of Columbia State Board of Education working session is now called to order. The working session is being streamed live on the State Board's YouTube page for members of the public to view. The roll will now be called to determine the presence of a quorum. Executive Butler, please call the roll.
Representative Barnes. Representative Lynn. Representative Mayor. Representative Ting.
Here.
Representative Best. Representative Chang. Representative Goulet.
Here.
Representative Henderson.
Present.
Representative.
I don't know if it's us online, but Bernice, you cut out.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I stopped. Representative Colson. Representative Johnson Law.
Good evening and present.
Representative Williams. Representative Thompson.
Present.
President Patterson.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Director. The quorum has been determined and the State Board will now proceed with the meeting. At this time, I will share the leadership report. I sent that out and I apologize to those who I missed the first time around on the email. So I sent it out via email. And I apologize for those that I missed in the first round of send out, but it is available for folks to be in their email. With that being said, we had a number of meetings that I tried to annotate as best as possible. The first being, we had actually, which hardly ever occurs, is 2 meetings with the Deputy Mayor of Education. In the first meeting, I was unable to attend due to a work-related emergency at the last minute. And Representative, Vice President Williams was there in my absence, and also Director Butler. So I tried to encapsulate basically what happened in that meeting from what the notes that were given to me. And as you can see, we talked about a number of items in there. We talked about the DDOT letter and, you know, what is out there at this current time. We also spoke about the response for schools regarding immigration and the OAG guidance on that. I put those notes in there and where, you know, his explanation for what they were doing from the Deputy Mayor's office and their perspective on things and how they were approaching that with each school so that you guys would also understand that. We also spoke about education as a civil rights and what his thoughts were on that particular subject. And so we will be talking about that a little bit later. We also talked about everyday counts, task force, and the next steps in that particular area. I want to emphasize that area because in that is graduation profiles, and that was the subject of the second meeting. And I know I have a debrief later from reading the agenda and everything, but and so I may wait till then, but I'll wait till that particular time. But we talked a lot in that second meeting totally about the graduation profiles and some of his thoughts on how they're proceeding and some of our thoughts. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a later part of the meeting. We also had our meeting with the state superintendent, and in that meeting, and we're still following up, they promised us a 1-pager. And that was a week ago, and I don't think we still have received that, so I'm still going to emphasize.
Yeah, it was about that.
Okay, I haven't checked my email, so I just told by the director that we do have it now after a week and a half or 2. So we do now have that in our possession. We also reviewed written responses to the teacher monitoring. We also talked about the bottom 5% of schools. And they gave us some information on that, which I put in you guys' emails, and you go to those tabs. The other thing as well is we had a meeting, leadership with the addition of Representative Henderson and Director Butler had a meeting with Representative Parker As many of you guys may know, he introduced some legislation recently about empowering our board, the State Board of Education. He has his thoughts on that. So what we basically did is we met with him to discuss where he's coming from in his proposal of his legislation, or his bill at this particular time, and where we are, and what we're doing about board authority. For me, and what we try to explain to them, those are two separate things. We're going to continue, and there's going to be a report this evening from my understanding of the working group, which is totally separate from what he is proposing. We do not have any thoughts on that as a board as of yet, because it has just been proposed. So we haven't really delved much into it, other than as individuals looked at what he has proposed. And we just kind of talked about it, his rationale from opposing it and proposing it. And so that's what we did in that particular meeting. And the last thing that I hit on in my report is committees, which will come up again, external committees. I truly need everybody to go online and give me some interest in what you want to do in an external committee. I need that support. It's been sent out. I hope those will respond to it. I'll get there in a minute. But we need to know that, because we need to make sure that we have a resolution ready for the working meeting. So we want to be, considerate of the staff work and timeliness of that. So if we could make sure that we identify those that we want to be part of. With that being said, I'll entertain questions on the report. And I believe Representative Ting has a question.
Student members aren't allowed to join external committees, right? Student members aren't allowed to join external committees, right?
The only committee that has the only external committee that has a student member is the Everyday Counts. Anna attends that. But I am not 100% sure if she attends as the board representative, because currently Representative Williams is the state board representative.
She was on the task force before, the state board is separate.
Yeah. So, but other than that, there are no other committees where external student representatives there.
Thank you, Director. Other question, Representative Johnson Law.
Mr. President, to clarify for the public record, when you said DDOT, you meant OSSI DOT letter, right?
Yes. Okay,
and Madam Director, thank you for your clarification. I think in the email I got confused. We're just waiting for it to go through
This is
the lawyers.
some type of lawsuit that we were not aware of. And so they just asked us to run it by our attorney at the Attorney General's office to make sure that, because technically, well, maybe you like being represented by the same people. So I'm not quite sure. They asked us to run it to the attorney. And so we
Okay.
sent
we just
it.
need a little bit clarification, because there's a lot going on
Got
with
it.
that particular area.
Understood. 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 Thank you both.
And we want to make sure we're all on the same path as far as the District of Columbia, so that's why they're happy.
Understood.
Thank you so much.
Representative Thompson has a question online that says, was the IC dot letter, I guess I'm assuming shared with the IC leadership? Oh, there's two questions, one about the Parker. So I guess essentially she wants to know if the IC leadership has a heads up that the IC letter is coming. So that's the first question.
So, thank you, Representative Thompson. So on the OSSI letter, yes, because I had a conversation with the interim superintendent on that particular one, and that was requested some time ago. So yeah, and for the other question that I believe that's in the queue that I see on Parker's introduction, you asked, is there a rationale shared for it? I believe his rationale from the meeting is that he believes that we should have the ability, and Representative Henderson, you were there as well, so chime in if I missed something, that we should have the power to introduce that it should be a two-way street when it comes to policy, and that we should be able to initiate policy just as much as vote on it. And that was his rationale from my understanding of the meeting. And Representative Henderson, if you would like to add anything to that.
Just to add that he sees it as a longstanding ask from state board,
Right.
dating back to the resolution that was passed when he was still on the board.
Right.
And I believe you were on at that time
Right.
as well.
So, yes, he just sees it as basically almost some of the things that came out of your work, Representative Thompson, when we talked about governance and being able to have a two-way street when it comes to policy. Any other question? And I'll wait just in the event that Representative Thompson or anyone who may be online, a member that's online. Okay, seeing no further questions, I will now turn to Executive Director Butler for her report.
Good evening, members of the DC State Board of Education. I worked with DGS to complete a walkthrough this month of potential bidders on our upcoming office renovation. Bids closed in February, and DGS and OTP are hoping to identify a contractor for our office renovation by March 14th. We are preparing for our temporary office relocation to start in June, July this summer. The team spent most of our time last month preparing to submit responses. Preparing the agency's response to the FY 24 performance oversight pre-testimony questions. We submitted those responses on Monday, which all of you all were shared and CC'd on that email to Chairman Mendelson. We produced a fantastic catalog of the board and agency fiscal and programmatic accomplishment. To drive these successes home, Deputy Director Briones, our PIO, and Ruth and I are scheduling visits to council members over the next 2 weeks to share copies of our annual report and the agency's priorities in preparation for budget oversight happening in April. We are also still working with the Office of the Attorney General to respond to the subpoena from Meta, which we are in the midst of working on. The team is in the final steps of working with Octo to digitize our P-card processes and building our agency's first financial dashboard. We have begun the recruitment process for our new policy and A&O fellow. I want to take this moment to thank Runa, who has served as our policy fellow for the last 9 months, for all of the hard work and dedication and excellence they have brought to our team. Members should have received a financial disclosure email from our human resource specialist, Mary Cooper, in February in preparation for financial disclosure reporting. Remain in compliance. If you have not completed a favorite training, please do so before May. Our new members have already completed their training as a part of their onboarding process. The next few weeks will be dedicated to our agency's budget oversight testimony in April. The team is also hosting a committee chair orientation to ensure that the board's ad hoc committee get off to a great start. Lastly, if you have any agenda items for the state superintendent meeting, please email them to us by Monday, March 10th at noon. Our next meeting with OSCE is on the 12th. Thank you. That concludes my reports.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Director Butler. Do members have any questions for Director Butler on our report? I see a few. I'll start with Representative Henderson, and then I'll come back to you, Representative Ting.
When does the fellows term end?
They are at different times. So our policy fellow term ends Friday of this week. Our A&O fellow ends April 9th. So we are in interviews for policy fellow now. We just opened recruitment for the A&O fellow. So our goal is to have a new fellow on board in April for policy and admin operations to have a new fellow.
And you have candidates for.
Yeah, that's what candidates. So Darren leads that as our coordinator, our fellows coordinator, and he has relationships with all of the local universities, including Howard, and all of them. And so he did early outreach last year to make connections on campus to their, particularly we prefer graduate students, but we have had undergraduate students to make sure that we are recruiting students to work with us. And the goal is to give them a substantial work experience, which is why our fellows stay on board for 9 to 10 months instead of a semester.
Representative Ting.
I didn't get any email from Mario about like financial disclosure, but I don't really have any.
You're gonna have to.
Oh, no, I hear. So that is for elected members. Student members are not elected and do not have to financially disclose.
I mean, I don't, yeah, I'm not really.
Sorry, so it is
That doesn't
for
apply to
elected
me, right?
members and DC government employees who
Yeah.
deal with financial matters. So like
Okay.
our credit card holders for the agency, they also have to financially disclose. I have to financially disclose. Our budget officer and all elected officials on state board and the council have to do financial disclosure.
All right.
So you did not miss it.
I appreciate the question though, because you want to be in compliance. So I truly appreciate the question first and foremost. Representative Jonathan Law.
Madam Director,
Yes.
Should we ask you questions about the meta thing offline?
We are not being sued. We
Oh,
were
I
just.
Okay, because I'm trying to figure out like,
What
why?
is it?
Yeah.
Oh,
you don't mind me
so
asking.
the Office of the Attorney General, sued Meta,
Okay,
or I'm not quite sure. We didn't sue them, so.
We can initiate the suit.
Yes, but it is something to do with young people and social media and influence and mental health.
okay,
And so in all of their rights, as someone who is being sued by an entity, they can subpoena. So if the DC government is suing them, then they can subpoena records from the DC government, which just happens to include agencies.
right.
So they have subpoenaed 9 government agencies for information going back to 2012. Everything from clearly anything like policy pass, but any research, any papers, any emails, any ads run on buses, just let people go onto social media to click on something for your agency, particularly for the agencies that have anything to do with children. So OSSI has been subpoenaed, so they have, OSSI has a much bigger staff, they have their in-house office. So it's a different weight on them.
Okay.
But we've been subpoenaed, I think other people like the Department of Mental Behavioral Health, like anything that may have health records of kids. So they subpoenaed 9 different agencies that are in the district government, we just happen to be one of those.
Got it.
So it is not a lawsuit to us, no one is suing us, we just have to comply with the subpoena because we are technically a part of the district government, which is suing them.
Gotcha. Thank you for the clarification.
Any other questions for the director? All right. Again, thank you, Director. I appreciate you. Next, we'll discuss the February.
Sorry,
public-
I have one. Yeah, put in the
Yeah, I'm
chat.
sorry, I put your name. Okay, thank you.
I think it
Okay.
came through, late. Has leadership followed up with the OAG as we discussed at the admin meeting about supporting with the meta request?
Not yet, no, we mentioned it at that leadership meeting that happened, but that has not yet happened.
Okay, hopefully that can happen soon, because I know it's a huge lift.
Thank you. As I said, next, we'll discuss the February, public meeting. We did not have an expert panel.
Oh, she has another.
Oh, you had another question? I'm sorry.
These questions.
Okay, no problem.
Is there anything worth sharing about the performance oversight hearing yesterday? And the staff put in, there's an agenda item dedicated to debrief the performance oversight.
Yes.
And
So-
there's attachments.
Yeah, so that's coming, Representative Thompson, I'll talk about it. Thank you. Next, we'll discuss the February public meeting. We did not have an expert panel at the month's public meeting, but there were over 85 public witnesses who signed up to give testimony, which made for a very long night. We gavelled out at exactly 12 o'clock. I would like to take the opportunity to debrief the public meeting together. The members have thoughts or feedback about the meeting and the testimony we heard, specifically what can be improved upon next time. I think there were a number of things for me personally, but first, before I say some of my concerns or things where I believe we can do better, I would like to open it up to hear from members, their thoughts on where we can do better, what they thought of the particular meeting, which did not have an expert panel, but had a lot of folks. With that being said, I can open for questions. I believe Representative Johnson Law raised her hand first, so I'm gonna go to you, Representative Johnson Law.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think like one of my biggest concerns is we always want to respect the public's time, especially when we have long meetings. And so I think it took us maybe 2 or 3 times to get a quorum. And then I know we had some tech issues in addition to all of that, which again, I know that I want to say thank you to the team because I saw them myself literally working behind the scenes to make sure that the sound and everything was working. And then, but in addition to us not having quorum and tech issues, it just made it to be very problematic. And I just never want us to think that, you know, we're playing on the public's time or anything of that nature, that we take these matters very seriously. And I remember the testimony from the student about professionalism, and I always want us to be professional in the public light. And so to all members, I think even if we can't physically get here, okay, making sure that if we can get online, at least just to get a quorum, just to get people going. The second thing is maybe I need to go back in the bylaws and look at this. Can we have a process or talk through how amendments are made?
Yes.
Okay, I know, and I'm gonna leave that there because I feel like, yeah, okay.
Yes. Other comments? I believe Representative Ting.
One also, yeah, I was actually texting my friend the pictures of the bylaws for the amendments. He was very confused. But, I'll definitely be amending things and that'll be fun. But, so I would like to hear Representative Johnson Law. But also, is there like a standard way that DC State Board of Education or OSSE communicates with different LAs and schools? Because like, for example, with the OAG thing, it looked like a lot of schools were like confused, and I was confused as to like why there isn't a way that OAG can directly communicate to like principals. That makes sense. Like, does that exist?
It does.
Oh,
It does. It does. If I'm understanding your question, Representative Ting, is like in communicating, it's really not the OAG that does that. It's normally, as we discussed with the Deputy Mayor of Education, there's an inconsistency between, public school, traditional schools, and communications and how they go out, and the other 100 or so LEAs that are charter schools and stuff like that, the consistencies of that and how that happens. So that's where the breakdown as far as communication sometimes of being uniformed and how it's disseminated happens. Okay. So when we were talking to him in our particular meeting, you know, and there were concerns about how information on immigration and, you know, guidelines were being done. You know, traditional schools had their way of doing it. I know as a person who works at an LEA, we had our way of doing it. We got that guideline from our head office. So there's the charter schools and a very bifurcated system. There will be some inconsistencies, but I agree there should be some consistency so that every student and family is getting consistent information. Other questions? Comments? Well, I'll give mine. I agree with you, Representative Johnson Law. I have stated, you know, while we want to be as succinct as possible about amendments, I know for me personally, once we started introducing amendments in that particular situation and how they were given to us, that was concerning for me because it got me off beat. I can only speak for my own. And so we want to make sure that we're doing that as best as possible. And for the staff who had to go back and do a lot of things because these things have to be posted, it's incumbent on us if we're going to have amendments, make sure that we get them in a timely manner. If you promise an amendment to the staff, please get it to them prior to the meeting so that when the discussion is had, we know how to go through it. It can also be put into the script to make sure that we understand it and it can flow a lot better. The other thing for me was we had a lot of members, a lot of people speak. And I always want to be appreciative. I try to watch council meetings. I know sometimes, you know, those meetings run late because they have so many that are testifying. But once we got to like 40 individuals on the same subject matter, while that story is really good and very nuanced and we want to get those, at some point, if 40 people are coming to speak about the same exact subject, it gets a little much. I won't say it gets old, but it gets a little bit much. And so we have to figure out a way that we're not flooded with the same thing over and over again, but also, you know, exercising democracy and allowing those individuals to speak. So I don't have an answer to it, is what I'm saying. But I do want to say I'm very cognizant of, you get 40 people coming to talk about the same thing, it makes for a long evening. Especially if we're pretty much sure where we're going to be on that particular item. And we're listening to 40 people tell their personal stories and how it affected them. So that was a bit much for me.
one small way would be also allowing people to like kind of opt in to, for example, the Georgetown, the legacy people could have opted into having panels of just them, like, and that way you get like the batch, and then that way you can like group them together, and then you can reduce the number, you can have larger panels because it's just that topic.
Mhm.
And like with more people there, and like get through it quicker, if you
Right.
get what that means, and they could, it would obviously opt into that. Because it would give them the advantage of like, they can just only focus on that kind of thing during the entire panel. Like as someone who's like, is trying to like do something similar to that on March 19th, nowhere near the scale, don't worry. The, Yeah.
And I agree with you, Representative Tim. I think what we need to do, just like when we had the sunshine, that came through, they got larger and larger. I think as we know someone is coming to represent a particular item, that we try to work with them and say, ask them, can you pick a few members for you to speak on your behalf? We appreciate the volume. Of course, it looks great that people are turning out for meetings and they feel like they found a place where they have a voice and they can get it amplified through the State Board of Education, because that's what we're here for. But we should be working with those groups to say, okay, you're coming in masses. Can you as a group, since you're coming to support this thing and it's your group, can you pick a few members that you feel have the best way to articulate your particular subject matter that you're proposing and supportive and have the most riveting story, and kind of tailor it down and not all 40 of you do it at the same time? Those are some things that we might try to work with them on. I know that would be a lot for the staff, but just trying to say, look, we hear you. We're not trying to stifle you, your voice, but at the same time, that's a lot of people at one particular time. So those are my thoughts on it. Yes, ma'am.
So I know Ebony Rose has her hand, but.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Ebony Rose quick. I don't know how it came in, but Representative Thompson.
Yeah, I mean, we discussed this during the admin meeting. The topic of shortening meetings was brought up by Representative Chang, I believe, at last meeting.
Yeah.
One of the things that I guess will be in our report is that I don't believe we currently ask folks if they are signing up with an organization. And so maybe we should probably do that in order to encourage maybe some streamlining of testimonies. I do want to note that we do have a process for bylaws. I do highly recommend members to lean on the staff and share with them things early and as much as possible. But there is a outline process for how amendments happen in the bylaws.
We do ask, people have an option to enter an organization that they're affiliated with when they sign up to testify. So that's in there.
I appreciate that. Okay. And Representative Goulet.
Yeah, a couple, I guess, ideas on this. So, I think the first thing was, I don't think people were sure that there were 6 votes necessarily solid on the legacy admission piece, transmittal legislation. I think we had a couple of new members coming on board. There was concerns by a couple members the last time. So I don't think there were 6 votes locked in. So I think that's one thing that we got to emphasize. I think the only way to really get at this is to, if when people sign up, we ask them generally what the topic is they're signing up for. In this case, if I'd have known there was that many students coming back to speak about the legacy admission piece, I would have encouraged them to tailor it down. But what we often do is we find out when we look at the room. And so unless I know that there's 30 people coming in, which I didn't encourage them to bring 30 people in,
Right.
they brought it themselves. There's no way for us to then reach back out to them and say, hey, okay, let's just keep it to, maybe, 7 or 8 people tops. So the only way I can think to do that, because they're not going to sign up for an organization, they're not all representing, like, it'd be different if they all represent DC PAVE or something like that, but they were all individuals representing themselves,
Right.
part of the same issue. So the only way I can see to get at that issue, because I do think that it got repetitive near the end, and we did have votes for it, would be that the staff would have to record the issue. Then reach back.
There is a question in there about that, but people just often don't answer that or say one thing and then testify about something else, or will write multiple things. So it would be really challenging to actually use that in this.
Ask the question.
Like what council does when you sign up for an oversight hearing where there's multiple agencies, is there's like a checkbox. So there's a specific list you have to choose from, whereas right now we have an open response.
I guess there's not really a solution to that,
Yeah.
because, I mean, if I'm not told ahead of time that there's 30 people coming in, I can't then reach back out and say, hey, guys, can we limit this or something like that? So I guess we just keep going the way it is.
So Alistair has his hand up.
Representative Chang.
Hello, hello. Yes, so I think there's some things that are changes to the policies, right? And who gets to come in that we should consider. So you know, I know Maryland State for the State House and Senate has a limit, right? To you sign up and there's a cutoff, and if you don't, you know, pass a certain amount, it's only written and you're not on, you know, in person. We've also seen others where there are pre-recorded videos that we could watch on our own time separately, right? Just to keep these meetings from going to midnight and not stifle democracy, as you said, Dr. Patterson. But then I also think there are things that we should consider, which are, you know, more about norms for us, right? And what I mean by that is, you know, not repeating.
I think you cut out, we missed a part of your
We missed
comments.
part about 3 seconds of your comments.
Shoot. So there's the policies that we could implement. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. There are the policies that we can implement about, you know, who speaks and how they share their messages with us. And then there's norms for us, right? That are not necessarily de jure, right, rules, but rather norms around, you know, not necessarily everybody going around and asking a question for every round, not asking redundant questions, not just acknowledging that we heard somebody, but rather, you know, have the norm be we follow up with folks on our own if we have questions, right? And then we can share that with the group, but only asking questions if we really have something that we think that the whole group really needs to hear in that moment. Right now, the norm to me is all of us say something, right? And for every single group of folks who come through, and that also is significantly lengthening the amount of time. But certainly that's not really an enforceable thing. It's more of an effort from all of us, right? And a commitment from all of us if we agree that's something we want to do.
Thank you. Representative Boulay. Well, I apologize, Representative Boulay. I'm gonna go to Representative Henderson because he had to ask a question.
Thanks. Real quickly, I appreciate, and I don't love a long meeting either, but I'm also just kind of, sometimes the meetings go long, and that's democracy. And that's
Democracy in action.
Yeah, I do appreciate that, you know, there are things that we can do if we don't really need to ask a question, maybe pass, but otherwise.
Thank you, Representative Boulay.
I just would agree with Representative Anderson. I think we have had a couple long meetings, but I think generally this is really valuable for the public to be able to come and speak. We could try to control it. I mean, one thing I would recommend people do, I mean, it's fun to do, but is to, when a witness doesn't tailor their testimony to 3 minutes, somebody will say, well, use my time to finish your testimony. That doesn't teach good time management. You basically lets people off the hook and gives them more time than everybody else. So that'd be one thing I would recommend. It's just, I mean, it seems very nice, but it's not training people to stick within the 3 minutes. And I think that's important, is that everybody gets the same amount of time and a fair ability to articulate your point in 3 minutes.
And the last thing, which is solely kind of comes to me as president, because I get to say if somebody missed a turn and comes back, I want to be sensitive, and I want to say this because there was a person that I knew personally that missed their turn, and I allowed them to come back, and I said this to Representative, I'm going Director Butler, maybe you're a representative, and I can appreciate, you know, she wants to keep to the process and everything like that, and I want to make sure I adhere to that. So I will say in this process, it will be very unlikely unless it is our fault, like a technical thing on our side, that I'll be, you know, going back to someone who has missed it for a particular reason. I did it twice in the meeting last time, I knew both people. I love both people very much. So I was a little bit kinder because I knew them and they were, and I just have a appreciation for the work that they do. But I will stick to, if you missed that turn and it's you that missed it for whatever reason, and it's not a technical problem on our side, like we couldn't connect with you or our staff, I probably will go to no. And that I won't be going back in the queue to pull people out after they have shown up. So that's just my statement. If someone asks me, because sometimes we know people and say, can they'll text us? Like they did in this situation, it's like, can you tell President Patterson that I'm here? Can you get me back in? And and I try to be nice, and I think we all want to be nice, but if you missed it, it's unfair to go back. So I'm just gonna say that and leave it there. With that being said, President Thompson?
President Thompson.
Representative Thompson.
Representative Thompson.
Yeah, so I think this was helpful and I generally agree. I do want to clarify. It wasn't, I agree that if people miss something, then maybe we should not modify. But we actually don't have a guideline process, anything that says if folks want to change their testimony from in-person to virtual. And so in this case, well, I know the case that I inquired about at last meeting, the person had reached out prior to the meeting to see if they could change it. And they were told no, because we had too many people. And it was left up to you as the president. And so maybe that's something we just need to clarify and be consistent about. Because the whole reason we have virtual testimony is to make it more convenient for folks. And typically, like with the council, like if you change, it's fine. And so we don't have any guidelines around that. And so I'm just suggesting that we have consistent guidelines when folks want to go from virtual to in-person or in-person to virtual.
I appreciate that personally because I didn't have that nuance. And I appreciate that comment, Representative Thompson.
Well, and I feel like what another element to this is that, like, on the staff side, when people ask us, we just deny them. We either sign up for virtual or sign up for in-person, and we don't allow people to change after. When they contact us in the office to ask. And so it's helpful to know that for all of us to get on the same page. I think for the board to make a decision about what it should be, because we've told people no, straight out. They email, like, so if they sign up to be in person and it's after the deadline and now they want to change to go virtual, we usually said no. That they can submit their written testimony, but don't allow them to switch to virtual.
My question is why?
Because then it take up more time, because we didn't want to change. We post the list after the timeline closes. But we just didn't allow it because we didn't want to extend the courtesy to everyone.
Another clarifying question, because maybe I'm confused. So I'm just gonna say, if me and Representative Henderson are testifying, right? And I'm like, hey, Director Butler, I can't make it. I got my daughter, Can I do virtual? We're still in the same lineup though. It's like LaJoy, Robert, work with me. Can LaJoy?
There's no way. We send out all the links for the people to sign up virtually days before the meeting. We normally do not send out links to the Zoom the day of the meeting because we're actually all downstairs in the meeting.
Okay.
So those are sent out in advance.
Okay, that's what I was trying to figure out. Is there?
So for me, because I appreciate what Representative Thompson is saying, and that does seem like that could be an issue, and I do want to make sure that we do this the right way and create policy around it. But to your point, Kathleen, because I had to testify a couple times this week on some other issues. When you do receive that, it tells you can do it virtually or in person. And it doesn't stipulate that you have to identify it at that particular time. It just puts you in the queue and you have the opportunity to do it either way. They're just going to put you in the queue, and then how you show up is how you show up. If you're in the room, they'll call you up. If you're doing virtually, but they send out the link, I guess is what I'm saying. They send out the link when they verify that you're on the list to testify.
If you're virtual, right?
No,
either way.
For council.
For council, and I apologize, I didn't identify it. For council, when they send you that you are now, going to be testifying.
Right.
And what they do is they send the link to you at that particular time and say you can testify either way at that particular time. So when they're talking about the issue of, now we have to send it out for those who have said they want to do virtual. If the notification had both on there, either way that they showed up, they would be able to testify because you're not changing anything. If at the last minute they found that traffic is bad and I'm in my car and I'm, you know, whatever, I can't make it. I'm gonna do it from my car. I'm gonna give my testimony from the car. They can because they have it. That's all I'm saying.
I
Okay,
think she's not here to speak for herself, so I
Okay.
don't wanna like put words in Javon's mouth.
okay.
But she's the person who's in charge of the Zoom normally and putting people up on the panel and giving them permissions and taking them back down. And the way that she does that is based on the agenda. She
Right.
knows who is virtual and who is in person. So she knows who to be looking for when they're called, if she needs to go into Zoom, if she needs to give people permission or take away their permission. And so I think she will need to have some sort of advance notice
Right. And-
or maybe some help
Right.
to be able to know, like, to be able to facilitate the Zoom. Because if we're having 80 people and she doesn't know if they're in person or online and she has to scroll through and try to find them and she can't do it in advance because she doesn't know who's gonna be there or not, that's gonna slow the meeting down even more. And
But I
that's
think-
kind of the opposite of what y'all are trying to do.
And I agree again, but I think we can set some policy around this as was suggested and kind of norm on it so that we're not excluding people who may have emergencies or things like that. And we're kind of giving them the option to participate in democracy. So I'll leave it there. With that being said, were there any other questions?
I think Madam
I'm sorry,
Director
I
has
think we
something.
need a decision.
Okay.
Or a plan of action, like,
Okay.
I don't think we can just leave the discussion, I
Okay.
think that you all need to let us know as staff what you all would like to see, and we can try some things out, but I don't think we can just end the discussion without like a concrete action.
Okay,
So
so.
that we can like prepare for the next meeting.
So since
Do we
you
need a
that
motion?
representative-
I don't know if it needs a motion, but
It
I
doesn't need a I don't
we just
believe
need
it
like
needs a
to
motion.
decide what this. If the instruction to the staff is to go back out and figure out something, and so
That's
that's why,
exactly what
I
I
just need to know what the it is. Because just based on like, we're gonna close and go to the next topic, that doesn't tell us what is expected for the next public meeting.
And I appreciate that, Director. So what I'm suggesting is that, the staff looks at other ways that we can make this. One of those ways of looking at it is how, technically the council does it, how they navigate it, just.
Oh, they have a whole system that
I
we
know,
can add
yeah.
for.
I know they have a whole
Yes.
system, but just some of the policy as well, how they do that. And then come back with us and we'll discuss how we'll address it. But if you can look at some systems, that allows for virtual and for in person. And if somebody has, you know, there's a switch, we can look at how they handle those situations. So that's my request for the staff to investigate.
But what do you want to investigate working for the public meeting in February? No changes, some
At
changes.
this particular time, but this one, because of the short notice, no change at this particular time until we have done our homework, and then we'll come back to it, okay?
That's helpful, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no more questions on this particular subject, want to make sure that we keep being very conscious of people's time this time around. Next on our agenda are committee reports. The 3 ad hoc committees are working on planning their meetings to be held later in March. In the meantime, I will open it up to updates from any committees and working groups that have met this past month. I believe the administrative committee met, student advisory committee met. So I'll entertain
And the
administrative
working group and the state board.
And-
was working.
and state board.
Mr. President, I have a question.
Right.
Yes.
Are we not debriefing the state board retreat?
Yes, from what I have on here, we're doing that a little bit later, so I'm following
Oh.
the script that we have right now.
Okay, so I will put this back down in my agenda.
Sticking to script.
I was just confused by the agenda, that's all.
DC policy.
Yeah, no, so,
That's all.
in the board leadership meeting, Vice President Williams is going to facilitate that, and he asked to move it below the committee reports.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
So that change just not announced at the top.
Thank you,
But,
Director.
Vice President will facilitate that, because he had to be here later, but he is online now, so we'll do that after the committee reports.
Thank you, Director.
And you said that Representative Vice President Williams is online?
Yeah, you just hopped on.
Okay, and Vice President Williams, are you able to do your administrative committee report from online?
Yes, I can.
Okay, go right ahead.
So I'll be brief because I imagine, even though I can't see that you have the notes in front of you, but the admin committee did meet. We discussed a couple of things that were referred to the committee with regards to potentially changing the panel discussion or looking at as well how to handle a lot of public witnesses who showed up. We didn't have any particular recommendations with regards to making any changes, but we did hear input from members and around both issues. There were a couple other interagency things with just making sure that all of our other agencies are ready for council testimony and making sure that we are ready for council testimony. There are two in particular things with regards to making sure that we have some facilities things that we need to follow up on. But otherwise, we're able to meet and have our next meeting scheduled for March.
Thank you. Are there other members of that admin committee that want to have anything to add?
I will say that you can see on there, we talked about, their office updates, obviously, the ombudsman's office and the OSA office is in that meeting. There are some upcoming student safety conversations in Ward 4 and in Ward 6 that are coming up, so Dan should be reaching out to you all to invite you to join at those sessions. He's done 5 and I think 7 and 8 already.
And I would encourage you to attend those. I did attend the one in Ward 5. It was amazing. The amount of people that came out, the subject matter, everything. It was he just did an awesome job on that particular meeting. So when he does invite you, if he comes to a particular ward, I would suggest you attend. It is very helpful. With that being said, if there's nothing else or any questions for Vice President Williams, I'm going to move to the student advisory, and we have Representative Ting. If you could provide that, sir.
Yeah. So first we discussed DEI in schools. We discussed like we defined it, and then we discussed like whether it's important to put out schools. Students talked about it. Next, we talked about what kind of resolution that FEC wants to work on. And many of them, and then they wanted to work on something to reform the teacher evaluation impact system, which we've had, the state board has had testimony saying for teachers saying that they don't like impact. And then we talked about student representative mayor's bill about like the HVAC thing, and 26 in favor, 0 opposed, and 0 abstentions because people thought HVAC was important. And then they wanted it to be a little fleshed out, so it was, I think. And then there was and then we had the SEC members discuss Representative Goulet's cell phone resolution, where he was calling for the elimination of cell phone usage, and it was 8 in favor of the resolution, 17 opposed. And there were areas of agreement and disagreement. There was agreement that limiting cell phone use can reduce distraction and improve academic focus and could reduce cyberbullying. But people disagreed on whether a blanket ban would be effective, given access to other devices, and whether the collection process would be good. Yeah.
Thank you. Representative Ting, are there questions for?
Oh, also, the next meeting, the DC Policy Center will be there.
Okay, DC Policy Center. Are there any questions for Representative Ting?
Yes.
Representative Goulet?
The student advisory committee was going to be getting together to look at the issues. I know this month of discipline, bullying, that type of thing. Is there any assistance you all need with that? Because I know you wanted to have that discussion prior to us moving to that issue with the public panel. So are you guys all set with that? Is there anything you need from us?
We had a planning meeting this week and that was discussed. So we will be having about 15 minutes speaking on that panel. And any member is welcome to come. To the committee. Or to the committee meeting. It's next Monday from 5 to 6:30. You can come at any point. And DC Policy Center will be there probably at the top of the meeting.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. All right, members, we will discuss external committee membership during our new business. In the meantime, are there any external committee updates or reports you want to share? Independent Center?
There was a meeting of the Education and Research Collaborative in February. We discussed, we had a briefing from the DME's office on the education through employment pathways work that they're doing. I don't have anything particular to report about that, but there may be more in coming months.
Thank you for your report, sir. Any other external updates? All right. The State Board Authority Working Group was established in November and sunset on March 1st. I will now turn it over to the members of the working group to share any final updates and discussion items with us now.
So Robin is.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that.
Okay,
And there are two things. Materials.
it's in your hands, Representative Henderson.
All right, so our last meeting was February 20th. We discussed some research that Dr. Fleischer had done with NASB and the Education Commission of the States for some context to inform our work. We were concluding our work, and what we have worked towards is to present to the full board a resolution with our recommendations for expanding state board authority, as well as draft legislation. And that is going to come up at the end of our new business discussion. Our work throughout had focused primarily on three recommendations from the governance report the state board adopted a couple of years ago. And so you will see when we come to the resolution and the draft legislation that we are recommending those three recommendations to the board.
And those three recommendations are no one major. You can see that they are.
And maybe I'll also say that this one pager has a little more context on the processes that we talked about for each of the recommendations.
I could pass it on right now too. I mean, we'll discuss it further when we get to it.
So I guess, and when it's talking, so is this different from what Councilman Parker has out?
Yes.
Yes, that's a completely separate process.
Discussion?
Everyone's had your hand.
Representative Thompson?
Executive Director Butler asked, is this different? The answer is yes. I would highlight specifically one of our recommendations is for the board to be able to initiate policy. However, the process is different, and it also does not include amendments. We discussed in detail why amendments at that point would not be the best thing to do, amending OSCE policy. Yeah, like, so I think it's worth reading through the process recommendation for how I think it takes into consideration a couple of things. One is making sure OSCE has the capacity to do the work. Two is making sure that we do not materialize any unfunded mandates. And then three is we talked a lot about the thresholds at which things would be triggered. And so I think it's worth taking a look at how at face, they are the same. It is both that we are recommending the board be able to initiate policy, but we are not, the process we use is different. I actually think these set of recommendations, in my opinion, empower the board more, because as I read Parker's recommendation, it actually requires us to ask council to then ask OSSI, which really empowers the council. It doesn't empower us at the same level. But that is my individual opinion and not on behalf of the working group.
No, I appreciate all of that, Representative Thompson, especially the triggering aspects of it. Well, thank you. Representative Goulet.
Yeah, and I know Representative Thompson may need to leave, so I'll just echo what she said right now, and I can go into more detail when the bill comes up. I also would completely agree, and we didn't look at his legislation as part of our working group recommendations. I mean, it's addressing the same issue, which is state board authority. I mean, there is consensus on the initiation of policy. It's just how it does it, it's different. And I think we've come up with an approach which I believe is better for the state board, because right now, I don't really, under Councilmember Parker's legislation, it requires us to go back to council. And we really already have that power to do that as sending over legislation. This allows us to do it by resolution, but we also could do that, right now through legislation we go through. So I think our process can change within the executive branch. We're creating a process with OSSI is my preference, certainly. The working group recommended against doing amendments. That is in Councilmember Parker's legislation. I don't feel that's appropriate, to be honest, to be doing amendments, because we're in a body approving things. That was never contemplated that we would be making policy like that. So when you're on a dais amending those resolutions, it would be tantamount to when a contract comes to council or a draft of like a development agreement, that the council's up there amending different provisions in there. I think it's up or down, and that's how it should be. So I don't support that aspect of it. What I also like about the proposal that the working group came up with over the one that's at council right now is that we asked for the ratings. And that is something that's important to you, President Patterson. And it would give us then an explanation for when agencies don't choose to follow state board recommendations. And then lastly, the other thing that I like about what we proposed was just creating a formal process for the data requests. So for all those reasons, this really does touch upon the same issue. It amends the same exact part of the statute. But I do not support the bill that's over at council right now, and I do support our bill because I think it just gets to the issues that were raised to the board in a way that is more effective.
All right, thank you. Representative Henderson, and then I'll come to you, Representative King. Go ahead.
Just wanted to clarify that Councilmember Parker's bill only comes to council if OSSI does not comply to the request initially. So it doesn't require coming to council unless OSSI does not meet the request that the state board makes.
Thank you for
And
that
to add to
clarification.
that, if they turn it down, if they come back to the.
Thank you for that. Representative Ting.
This is sort of a stupid question, but on like the second page, like on part 2 on that section D, where it says like if the relevant DC government entity essentially ignores the state board of education's request for 15 days, I get that, but then it says the state board of education with a super majority of members can require the data to be submitted within 15 days. Does that allow for the state board of education to say require it to be submitted within like 20 days or 25 days?
This would be 30 days total, so it'd be another 15 days from the point the resolution is adopted.
Yeah.
So, it gives them 15 days to comply with the request, and there would obviously be some element of reasonableness in this too. If it's a large data request or something that would be available within that time frame, there would be exceptions made. But this was what the working group would come up with an initial 15-day request. If it was ignored or denied, then we would be able to then pass a state resolution requesting the data be provided within another 15 days, so 30 total for the action plus any time it would take to schedule the resolution of the meeting.
Okay, and then, so just to like completely clarify, sorry. So like this would also allow for the State Board of Education to like, request data to be transmitted within like 2 months or within three months. That's like
Yes.
data, okay.
Yeah, so what this, by saying within 15 days, we don't require, and we make that also clear within the policy, is we're setting a minimum threshold for the time. It doesn't preclude us from asking for a longer period of time.
Okay,
This
yeah.
is just the shortest period of time that this would authorize.
Yeah.
So, for instance, when you also see in terms of initiating policy, we would have a 1-year timeline
Yeah.
that we approved. We certainly could say, well, we realize this is gonna take some more time, so we'll give you a year and a half. It just means we can't do it in less than a year.
Yeah, that was like,
We initiate, it. So it's setting the minimum standards.
just wanted to, thank you so much.
Representative Thompson here.
Representative Thompson, will leave your hands up, ma'am. Representative Thompson?
Oh, for him.
Or I think it's a legacy hand.
Okay, it's a legacy hand. Okay, we'll accept that legacy hand and didn't want to bypass her. Were there other comments?
I'll just finish up here, then we probably won't even need to come back to this
Okay.
discussion again, but this was the recommendations of the working group, which we wanted to present. Well, Representative Henderson drafted the resolution for us. I took the first step of the bill. I think now, since we've now presented out as a working group to everyone, the board can review what we put forward in terms of the resolution and in terms of this, and then let us know between now and the public meeting if there's changes, because these are the working group's recommendations. But other members of the board may have other thoughts, and we're not bound by what the working group has put out for our resolution or our bill, but we wanted to send these out to everyone first, present on it, and then now it would be up to the board to send us changes, before the vote of the full board. So.
Yeah, and so I would, one, the deeper discussion on both of these issues are in the resolution and the legislation. But I think at that time, you all have an opportunity to discuss, like, what does everyone else think of what the work group has just presented? So we can have deeper discussion of that in the business, because I know that like the new members, or any members who are not in the working group haven't necessarily delved into these, the materials.
But to be clear, we're reviewing this, we're giving back recommendations, and then we're voting on this at the next public meeting.
Well, the vote on the resolution, excuse me, legislation, it's up to whether or not you all vote to put it on the agenda. So that's one, but the discussion that'll happen later is like, what do you think of this? Does the working group recommendations make sense? Did they not make sense? Do you agree or disagree with them? What would you change about what they have presented before something goes before a vote? And those type of things, but just to have that broader discussion. But this portion was just them presenting out what their recommendations were.
Representative Johnson Law.
Is the discussion gonna be like in an email, or are we gonna have like a chance to actually talk to each other about this?
In the new business, there's a full set of time set aside just to
So
discuss.
tonight, we'll do it in the new business and stuff like that. And we'll discuss if there's any changes or anything, what we think. If we're gonna recommend the resolution go forward to be voted on in the public meeting, but we'll have that discussion in the new business aspects of it. And even then, there's time to kind of like,
Cause you all could say, we wanna hold this for a vote in April or not do it in March.
but in the new business area, we're gonna discuss specifically, because this was their presentation to us. We'll discuss specifically what we like, what we don't like, what we think about it. We'll get to do that in the new business section.
One more clarifying question, sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Are we, and again, I don't know if this is like under the Open Meetings Act, but like, I understand we're setting a time for it now, but can we have a meeting to really discuss this, like just this issue, where we're literally like comparing like what Councilmember Parker's, bills, and then what we're doing to really just dive into it, because again.
That is up to the board. The bylaw says that there could be special one topic meetings called. But that is up to, you all have to vote to have such a meeting. And then it just has to be publicly noticed. But when you do a special meeting, they have to be one agenda item.
Okay.
So that is very possible. There is nothing that's precluding that. you all have to, the board members just have to decide. Those who be done virtually, we've done them virtually in the past, they don't have to be in person.
Right, okay,
But yes, it's very possible to have such a meeting.
okay,
You all just have to decide to do so.
And we would do that in the new business area when we talk about it,
got
as
it,
we decide what would be the next step.
got it. Thank you all for the clarification. Okay,
We can always have a special meeting.
thank you. So I was like, this is a lot.
No, no.
We can't do any business, y'all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's
No rush, and when we get to decide what the next action is. and-
Okay.
But I appreciate the question.
Thank
For
you.
clarification, because there are people probably want to ask the same question, that are watching online, but they can't answer. questions.
Okay.
That being said, I appreciate, the working group's efforts. I think you guys have done an amazing job. I want to say that first. The governance stuff come out with the last, previous, constitution of this board to get to this point, I think is an awesome thing. I don't think that just happened because normally what happens is something just sits on a shelf. We do a report or something like that, and what you guys did is brought that off the shelf, and we're getting some tangible results. So I appreciate the efforts and everything, and I look forward to our later discussion later. Next, we will debrief our February 1st state board retreat. Vice President to lead a discussion with members. We'll have several questions we want to ask, and I'll start off. What would you change about the retreat? What would you keep the same? Just want to have a lively discussion about our retreat. So I'm opening that up. What did you like? What would you change? Representative Colson.
Right. I
Dr.
don't wanna
Colson.
As a new member, I would say I definitely appreciate the thought and the planning that went into it. As a school-based person, I definitely appreciated the icebreakers and the games. I think my team was cheated. But I will work to let that go.
Have you let it go yet?
I said I will work to let it go.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
It's about following the instructions. It's okay.
But I think for the magnitude of information that needed to be covered, I think it was a bit short. And I would have appreciated a full day, a real retreat, possibly, with proper notice. I would even go as far as to say a 2-day retreat, just a weekend to really knock everything out and to walk away with an understanding of not only how things work, and I guess maybe other people may not have needed this before me as a new member, how things work, and then also to have a unified plan moving forward. I appreciate the meetings that we have had since then. But every time I walk away feeling like there is more work for me to go home and do. And I value the opportunity to have discussion with fellow board members rather than doing homework in isolation. So my short answer would have been more time.
Thank you. Other questions or comments in that particular vein?
I mean,
Representative Johnson Law.
thank you, Mr. President. I just want to echo Dr. Colson, Representative Colson, I wish we would have had just a little more time. I appreciate the staff and everything that you all are doing, but I feel like we spent 2 hours on committee structures, and committees are important. And I appreciate each of the committees having a new special education perspective, but we essentially kept them the same, right? And we added a sped focus basically to each committee, which is important. But I think, again, as a new member, there are so many nuances and there are so many questions. And sometimes I think it's important for us to just get things out there. Like, I'm just gonna put it out there. Like, there's so many things like happening federally that I feel like, again, like, how do we view them? Or, like, how do we tackle them? Or, or just talking about it, you know what I mean? We could have did that at the retreat. And I just wish we would have, again, had more time. I'm also gonna echo Representative Colson. With enough notice, I am even down for a 2-day retreat. I know people are busy, but again, this is just really important work. There's a lot of work that's happening. There's a lot of stuff happening in the district right now. And then some of the things that maybe folks that we need to hash out that may necessarily need to be public. Let's hash it out. And that's okay. And if it gets ugly, we'll come by y'all then. It'll be all right.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Other questions or comments? Okay, I believe, it's Representative Williams, we're supposed to be facilitating together, so I'm gonna give you an opportunity to ask a question if you're still there, sir.
I am walking in momentarily.
He's actually in the hallway, so we're gonna give him a little grace period to stroll on in. I can actually see his shadow at this point. So with that being said, I'm gonna let you sit down first, you take your seat. And I'll pull your chair out for you, sir. And then.
You're so nice, President Patterson.
Appreciate that. Yeah, so, and I appreciate the comments, Dr. Colson, Representative Johnson Law. We had similar debrief, discussion on that. And essentially where we wanted to go, because part of the goals for the retreat were to identify like the work and the strategic priorities that like we were focusing on. And we didn't feel like we got that. So the ask that we came up with was to send out a survey to keep it open-ended, to allow for all members to give their priorities, just so we could get some feedback from all members to kind of see what overlap exists around the needs of your constituents and then what work we should prioritize. And then also in the interim to just allow the committees to work as they should, to allow for the committee chairs to be empowered to lead that work, to allow for new issues to come up organically that we can then continue in our normal business. So just wanted to get feedback on if we can on that piece, but also encourage everyone to please fill out that survey so that we can have some data around what issues we should prioritize.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For my question, I'm not in the member group.
But you're welcome. And it's discussed.
Thank you.
We value Director Barber. We value.
But my question would be to the other members, what are your thoughts on the feedback that we share of ours? Because I haven't heard any reaction to that, or or is there like a suggestion to do something else in addition to? Because I don't want to leave those two viewpoints hanging out there, because I get the suggestion around the survey and getting what the actual issues that people want to work on. I just didn't know if you've had any other thoughts or responses to what's been shared, and so what do you all want to do going forward with that as members?
Right, I'll do that if you like.
Yeah.
I agree with both of what you said about getting more time. I mean, the only nuance I'd add to it would be, I would prefer to have a long day than 2 short days. So if we're gonna have more time, let's go 12 hours.
Yeah.
Get it done, so we have another day on the weekend versus, doing 2 6-hour days or something like that. So that would be my ask, but I do agree having additional time would be valuable, particularly when on that odd year that it'll be
The first year of a new
odd,
year.
yeah, it's every odd year you're bringing on 2 new people, so potentially.
And last time it was 4 of you all at once.
That's true, 4. I was thinking it was 2.
No, it was 4. All at
She
once.
remembered.
I remember
Sounds
vividly.
like a little bit like PTSD, but she remembers.
Hold on.
So yes, I agree, but I would do it all.
And I, as a representative, can appreciate what you just said, Representative Boulay. When I've done retreats, whether it's with other groups that I've worked with and stuff like that, it would make, a longer day. I have done 2-day sessions. I don't particularly like them. That's me, okay? Okay, but a longer day does not bother me if I know I'm going to be in a meeting for a longer period of time. And I'm gonna also be big, so I'm just gonna be honest with you. You're gonna give me breakfast, you're gonna give me lunch. And if we're even
12 hours,
later,
you gotta
yeah,
give people
yeah,
dinner.
you, if there's later,
Facts.
there's dinner, and there's a lot of activities and things are getting done at the same time, so it doesn't get boring or there's content, there's icebreakers, there's things along. I don't mind those, and I'm willing to do that. I am less likely to do 2 days, but a long day where you have my whole day and I'm talking about my entire day from the morning to the evening, I'm very much open to that. That's me personally. Representative Henderson.
I'll agree. I think we left it, because of the timing, we kind of fizzled out, I think.
Yes.
So like we were moving towards like identifying those strategic, but because we had gone over time, like people had to start leaving and so on. So we didn't get that resolution of, yes, these are the priorities, and like these are the committees that you want to be on because these are also your priorities. And so I think time did become a factor in that. But I do appreciate that, but I do feel like we were moving in that direction. We just needed a little more time to resolve it.
What I'll also say to your point, Representative Henderson, is like, when you plan for a longer day, what tends to happen is because we're all busy people demand our time. We won't schedule other meetings immediately after the supposed time that we're supposed to finish. So I know for myself, I'm gonna start stacking meetings. If I know we're gonna be done at 1 o'clock, guess what? I have something happening at 1:30, and I'm trying to move out the room. And they're still making content. You may need something from me, and I'm pointing to Director Butler. But you start to like plan your day based on what happens afterwards, as opposed to being truly inside the meeting. So
Yeah.
that's why I don't mind having a longer day. So then, I'm not planning anything else that the rest of the day.
Blackout.
And everything. I'm going to be focused on the subjects, the content in this particular meeting. So I'll just add that as a comment.
Vice President, what do you think?
I'm open to it. I think we would just need to clarify what topics and issues we really want to be able to be focused on. I think it needs to be substantive. And that otherwise would be time well spent. So, I'm open to that as well.
And just to be clear, you're open to us having another meeting?
Yeah, I think that at this point, I mean, yes, I'm open to us having another minute.
The person who has to execute the work is like, I need some specifics.
Well, no, because I think just hearing everyone, then that gets me back down. So what I'm hearing is X, Y, and Z. But I will tell you,
Could we plan?
not everyone is present today, at the meeting. So I do want to make sure we don't miss the members who are not here. And so I do think we're hearing you all be open to more targeted time that is clearly planned with some pre-planning. And I would just say there is an opportunity here for you all to lean in on what that agenda looks like. And so I think that is very much, if there is an additional day, what should happen, we can draft something, you all can then send feedback to decide on what you want to spend the time on very clearly, so you all have a clear purpose with clear outcomes for that time. I think that will be helpful, but I also just want to make sure that even before that final decision is made, that the members who are not here, because I don't know if it works if all of them don't show up.
Right.
I'm just being
Right.
honest. So like,
Right.
if the people who are not here don't show up, I mean, there are people online, obviously, but there are people who are not online, are not here. Then it's like you spend 6-7 hours coming up with something that one person's just not plugged into, or two people are not plugged into, then, or people who don't also block off the same amount of time, because they can really have the benefit of this discussion with all of you.
Can we maybe send out like a doodle poll to be like, hey, like who's open to having part 2 board retreat, part 2, I'm gonna say all day meeting. Are you open to it, yes or no? And if you get a resounding yes, then could the next steps be, okay, let's start the planning, where we're looking at. Again, and I want to give your team grace with timing. So not like, oh, we're gonna do this next month, maybe like a couple of months from now, or you know what I mean? Just to give y'all some time, but.
I mean, I do think that, in terms of timing and planning, I think we have time to do that. We just have to be after the performance oversight.
Right, of
Which I
course.
think will be fine, because you all have a 2-week break in the middle of April, because we need to move back to spring break. But anyway, so I do think that, I think that the harder issue would be making sure you all are all available. And, because there are people planning trips, they have families. So I think that's more of probably the big issue, but I agree, that I think there should be just a separate email sent about this, and I can send it out to you all. The one that has your survey in here, like with Vice President Williams, about like the issues that people want to focus on, the content issues. And then I also, and maybe we build it out to include some of the other things around the timing and what people are willing to do in terms of time all into one form so that people can respond. And to put a deadline, and that was also a text reminder after the email to let people know it's in their inboxes. So that everyone has an opportunity to respond. And then when we circle back, and I'm trying to see if this is possible. Probably not possible to get all of this done by Tuesday. Just, honestly, because I know that's when we need weekly leadership team. So if we can have a goal that not by this Tuesday, but the next Tuesday, everyone has responded so that leadership can sit down and then go through the response. And that way, that's the week, that meeting will be the public meeting. So that then we could send out something that says, based on this, if we're looking to plan in April, this is the information we got the survey and share that back out with people to get a final consensus based on what everyone has shared. I think that's true. But if that is something you all would like to see forward, we can write that down as an action item. Move forward with.
The other thing I want to ask, and I may be something wrong, but the frequency of them here.
I think we've done them twice a year. One in the spring and one in the fall. But that's just been up to whenever the staff is just like decided to remind you all about them. You all can decide when and how many times you want to retreat, but there's no like rules around how many times you can do them.
I kind of like having fall.
Yeah.
To be honest, because we're going into budget oversight season, and then we got the summer. Trying to herd cats over the summer is gonna be very difficult.
Yes.
So,
Especially when we will not have a physical office space in this building in the summer because we will be under construction starting June. Is that why there will be no physical office space.
hopefully there will be. I mean, I hope you guys can still.
They have found, I'm sorry,
Yeah, we're
they
trying
have
to
found us a
find
solution.
Solution,
They sent us
a landing pad, so to speak.
yeah, they sent us one in the email today for LaFont Avenue. 'Cause this is today, it came in the email today. It was like, so they found a space, but again, it is physical, the swing space would not be in this building. They offered us a space near the LaFont Plaza. Metro.
Okay.
Which is better.
Just that I would support the thought that actually worked pretty well because it was kind of halfway and we had a great retreat unless people feel there's more urgency for it. I thought that it was really enjoyable. That was my first year here. We did well. And then another one in the fall.
All right. Now, go right ahead.
Forgive me if it's too, God bless you, too social emotional, but I would really enjoy having more of an understanding of my colleagues, my board members in terms of how they operate and how they think. I think it's really insightful when you're working together as a team. So I don't know in the past if there's been anything that's been more like a I won't say Myers-Briggs, not personality.
We actually have already purchased it for the two representatives.
Okay.
Because you all did the Enneagram testing, before, I don't know, we still have your results. And so we went and bought an extra two. Yeah, see, look, we forget nothing. Okay,
come on
we
now.
forget nothing.
Okay.
So that they did do that, because again, it was like, literally, it was almost half and half, because we had 4 brand new members.
That's helpful.
And so we can send you those links, and then we can send out the group profile with the 2 new members, so that, and then so, because we did a whole activity with all the people who were wanting, because believe it or not, people fell into 1 or 2 camps, like roughly, which we thought was hilarious, which gives us insight to people who run for office in general.
Right.
A lot of insight to how they think.
Because it just really, you all just fell into kind of 2. I think Robert was the only one that was kind of outside the 2.
That's not. Okay.
So I just remember vividly about that. We had a whole thing.
Brandon and Darren are with their own one too.
Oh, yeah, Brandon, Darren, then it was Kathleen and Robert, and then everybody else was in 1 or 2. So it's a very distinct separation, but we have new members, and so I wonder how that's going. So I will send those links out to you. Because believe it or not, the staff asked about them, and it just could not. So So
Good.
the team, they were thinking about you all in that way. So we'll
Nice.
make sure we'll include that in the email that goes out, but our links will come to you all directly.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for the lively conversation. Director Butler, you scripted a lot of nice things in here. I believe we've answered all of them though, so I don't need to read from specifically.
Well, I would say we should give that credit to Dan, because I did not write the script.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Jen is out on vacation, so he took on that task force.
So I was willing to ask some more questions that were scripted out for me, but we answered those questions during the course of the conversation. So I'm gonna keep moving us along. At this particular time, normally we would take a break. I think we're moving at a pretty good pace, and if there's no objection to it, I would like us to continue on without a 5-minute break. If that's okay with everyone else?
Hi.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, so now we're gonna move to new business and other discussion. I want to ask members if they have any additional items of new business to add to the following list. So let me read this list down. DME meeting next steps, indoor air quality task force proposal from Brown University School of Public Health, performance oversight hearing debrief, SR 25-4 appointing representative to external committees, SR 25-5 promoting DC STEM supporting technology equity in math, SR 25-6 calling for public funding for the Public Charter School Athletic Association, SR 25-7 State Board Authority Working Group Resolution, and State Board Authority Working Group legislation. Is there anything that we want to add at this particular point? And before you go, Representative Goulet, I got a hand over here just a little bit before yours popped up. Representative Johnson Law.
Oh, I thought Representative Goulet was first. Okay. Eric, you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. I know Representative Henderson and I have talked about this, and I know Director Butler said we can have like special meetings on certain issues. Folks, we need to dig into that special education report. We gotta do it. I know we talked about, did we talk about this in January? And we never kind of went back around to it. And unfortunately now it's made national headline news. So I think it's time to come back to it and dig into it. And even if we dig into it to where it's like, okay, we have like somebody, even if it's like an expert panel at a public meeting, or even just part of a working session where someone comes present to us. Again, I'm trying to think how we can like plan it out, but just digging into it to figure out how can we uplift.
I'm gonna add that to, items, and we'll dig into it a little bit more as it comes up. Representative Goulet.
Mine's in a way related to that too, but I want to look at it from the angle of the student experience, like what I would look at for our committee. And it affects two things that have been in the news just this past week. One is the issue of childcare and pre-K in relation to facilities. That's a huge concern, definitely from my ward, one of the top concerns right now. So looking at that from the facilities and student experience perspective, and then also looking at the same special ed. Like it's an issue throughout the city, but looking at the facilities aspects of that, and then looking at whether students' needs are being met in an inclusive setting.
So can we combine this special?
Yeah, let's combine it.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes. So it would be, and it would be
Yeah.
building upon what was done in the boundary student assignment study
Mhm.
through the facilities plans, and you know, I won't be going into great detail on it when it comes up, but we'd be asking that it be referred to committee, so that our committee can take up the issue in the next meeting.
All right. Were there others that we want to add to new business, have a little bit more in-depth conversation about? Okay. Seeing no others, we will now proceed with our new business items. DME meeting next steps. Basically, just giving you guys a debrief on that. I said in my report earlier, what we kind of talked about in those DME meetings. Specifically, I want to talk about the graduation requirement aspect of that. We're in discussion with them because we had proposed in our last meeting, talking about a task force. They wanted to know if there's something that could preclude that, what we needed to talk about that would forego us forming a task force around that. We did not come out with a definitive answer. At that particular time, there were some offers like, how do we ensure that Ozzy is including us in the conversations? A little bit more and how that's working. So I will let Representative Thompson, are you still there, ma'am?
No,
She's not there. Okay.
she has logged on. I'm logging off for, that was 6 minutes ago.
I apologize. Representative Henderson, thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Representative Henderson.
So I think as the DME came in, their attitude was, let's not do the task force, but then after Representative Thompson explained
Mhm.
that she was interested in having a more streamlined, like mutually informed
Mhm.
discussion, the DME seemed more open to that, and so there wasn't any resolution, but he said that he was open to talking more about what that might look like. His concern, it seemed to me, was that there would be parallel work going on. You know, that the state board was running its own independent task force and then just kind of meet at the end, but Representative Thompson was saying that she envisioned something more about just keeping each more informed about the work that's going on. And to the kind of the status of the work, he was emphasizing that what we saw in November was very much a first draft kind of thing, and that they were happy to get a lot of feedback from that, and that they are already moving along based on the feedback that they've gotten. He said that OSSI will be getting back to us on the questions that we asked, but that that was very thorough and will take some time for them to respond to. But I got the idea that things have already moved quite a bit since November, and so the other thing he mentioned is that the timeline by now has definitely been extended, and so we shouldn't feel like we're just being kept in the dark, and then all of a sudden it's going to hit at the same time as we thought before, but that we're on a longer
path.
At this point, and so I think that fairly expresses what he was saying.
And what I appreciate about the meeting, as I said at the outset of this meeting, of this working meeting, was it's very rare that we have 2 meetings in the same month, within weeks, with the deputy mayor. So I appreciate him, asking for that meeting, based on, some of the conversations that we had, and then spelling out different things of how they would like to work with us on that. So I truly appreciate them. And then asking, 2 additional members outside of just leadership to attend the meeting with. So I truly appreciate collaboration that they're trying to show in that extent, so that we don't appear like we're 2 different groups, kind of like a poll running on site. So I appreciate them for doing that.
And I think something else that happened during that meeting, for example, the work that the DMV is doing on career pathways. They've agreed to have their one of our working sessions to share, because a pivotal lever in that work is graduation requirements. And so so that there's more intentional alignment and information being shared across. And so that was one of the things that they did offer us, to definitely have that be able to come again, because the timeline is not a fall anymore, because again, once you get into something, they realize there's more pieces to consider. So I do think that's the main reason that the timeline has shifted, which is a good thing. So there's no rush to try to finalize something for a particular deadline in 2025, but to be very thoughtful and iterative. And I think the more you all know about other pieces of work that's happening in the district that impacts graduation requirements, that fully equips you all to be better partners in the conversation about what's put forward, and to be a part of the action bringing out those new graduation requirements.
And we did get to reiterate some of the concerns that were in the letter that we sent to OSI, but just re-emphasize that, like, things that we're hearing about, including, concerns about what are the competency-based assessments that might be used, concerns that we've heard about changing math requirements and social studies requirements. So we were able to voice those as well.
We're done with that one.
Well, I'm curious, like, I think the original idea from the task force from the state board and came from Representative Thompson's concern about making sure there was broader and more opportunities for public input. So I'm just wondering what it looks like in our conversation with OSI for next steps, and I wanted to gather potentially any suggestions so that as we engage with them like next week, we can take our best thinking to that meeting to potentially have some specific solutions.
Yeah, and another takeaway for me though is that DME is more involved in this than maybe than I realized. And so I think they want to be part of that conversation as well.
Yeah, so that makes sense. I got that impression as well.
So in terms of, because we do have a meeting Wednesday with us, Tuesday or Wednesday, just next week. Like my days or dates are running together. So we do have a meeting with us next week. I do imagine that they are going to give us an update on where they are, because we have sent them the letter, the memo to them. Are there other additional questions that you all want to pose around that? Or like, what does it look like to be doing a joint engagement around this? Is that an area of topic, I think? Because I think that helps get at some of the task force things.
Right.
And maybe that engagement is in the summer, maybe it's at the beginning of the school year, maybe it doesn't have to be something that's happening today or tomorrow in terms of execution. But okay, everyone is texting now. She just watching it.
I think one thing to do would be to get clarity on what engagement they have already done. So the DME's office did let us know that like they've been doing some student engagement. And I think we haven't been aware of that, or I wasn't aware of that. And so getting clarity on what engagement they've already done. And then I think part of what's going on is we have a history of the last iteration of this. The state board did have a very robust task force engagement. And so, the people who are part of that are kind of wondering, well, where is that,
why don't we have
that
it again?
aspect of this? Yeah. So I think that should be part of the question to OSI of like, how do we make sure that we're matching that level of engagement?
And inclusivity. Right.
Just to add.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I'm going to support what the board we come up with. I mean, obviously, the two co-chairs of the committee, the leadership voice or whatever you think is needed to get that public engagement. Assuming a working group or a task force of task force. I'm fully on board with that. Just let us know, but we'll leave it before you.
I do not expect this.
With major support from our director. But I appreciate that.
I think one thing too, just to circle back with Representative Thompson and kind of see what she was thinking, so that we can go into that meeting with some concrete ideas, knowing that we want to create avenues. I know that they've done a full survey, so I don't think that necessarily a survey is the next step, but I think even just having some listening sessions where.
And that's me. I think they've done a lot of stuff, but we just don't know.
Correct. Right. And so I think getting Representative Thompson's ideas so that we can be prepared as leadership at that meeting. But then if other people have concrete suggestions, then we can take that into account when making recommendations and also seeing what their capacity looks like.
I'm going to go, if I may, to another subject. I was not in the first meeting, as I stated at the outset of the DMV meeting, and Vice President Williams can elaborate a little bit on this, but I do know there was another contentious, so to speak, point which is the education as a civil rights and their feelings on that particular thing. What I will say, I think because they don't believe this, the timing, because of where we are federally and a lot of other areas from my understanding, and I'm gonna do some follow-up myself because it's an issue that's near and dear to me. And I've reached out to their office to get more clarity since I wasn't in the meeting. And it appeared that he also wanted to speak to me directly about his feelings about it. So that's why I say anything. But what I will say is that for us, because what came out of our previous meeting is going to your committee. So there's no action or anything that has been decided at this time, but that's our next step. You know, and we have to acknowledge, and they have to acknowledge that it has been in a meeting referred to a committee. And it is a subject matter that is for the committee in their first meeting. So that's where it will kind of lie at this particular time, and I will let them know the path that it's currently on. And we can talk about, you know, how they feel about it, and what happens after that particular point. But at this particular time, because we've already decided that it is going to, it has been referred to the committee, that would be the next step. So I just wanted to make and be very transparent about that. So for our viewing public and anybody else who reports on our meetings and stuff like that, because I happen to know, and I think you guys know, they have people who watch our meetings and then they report back and stuff like that. It's like, okay, so I wanted to make sure that people knew, first of all, there's some concerns from the DME about that particular subject matter and where we are as far as a path on that, in that particular subject. So I think that was, I don't know if you had other things because I was in the one,
I mean,
and if there was anything else.
I think it wasn't so contentious as just clear. It was very clear that there were strong concerns that this is not a good idea right now. And I'll leave it at that. And so I think we have our processes and we are continuing with those processes, but it was very clear. I just want to make sure that we are communicating that to all of you.
Right. Look, and I'll keep it there. I don't know if there's anything else as far as any other questions on that particular debrief, so I'm going to keep us moving. In the interest of time, I'm going to bring up Andrew for indoor air quality task force proposal from Brown University School of Public Health.
Yeah.
One second, Andrew, I need to share the screen. There's a handout here.
I acknowledge you. Yes. You do like this, yeah.
All right, Andrew, whenever you're ready.
All right, y'all, good evening. It's our last meeting before we actually spring forward. So that's.
Okay, that is true, thank you.
So next time we leave, it might still be daylight, or at least just starting to get dark. But I'm happy to be here tonight and just get to present to you guys something that I think is pretty exciting. We recently received a proposal from the Brown University School of Public Health related to indoor air quality. And I think personally that it would be worthwhile for the state board to consider taking up a partnership that they proposed. I think that it would extend through lines for continuing work that we have going on related to this. I think that it would do a lot to increase your visibility as a thought leader and connector for change. And also help you guys lead in creating impactful material products that impact DC students and school communities. Just a little bit of a background about it. So obviously back in January, we had our panel on this where we had school health experts and HVAC engineering experts and parents and people from our DC school community testify about this. And then as a follow-up to that, we did our state board slate policy blog post on it as well. And actually that blog caught wind with somebody, a senior policy fellow from the Brown School of Public Health, who then reached out to see how their organization could be able to help with DC schools indoor air quality. That was Dr. Georgia Lagudas. She is based in Washington, DC, and worked as a senior advisor in the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy under the Biden administration and helped them launch their Clean Indoor Air Quality Initiative. And now obviously she's working with the Brown School of Public Health on policy initiatives related to clean indoor air quality. And what she reached out to ask if their organization could assist. And, you know, we had a few calls back and forth just to kind of get an idea of what it was that they could potentially, you know, do, how they could help us with this work that we have taken on, you know, kind of carrying that forward from we listen to our constituents in our panels. We set positions, we speak on these things through our resolutions, and then kind of extending that even further, creating a continuation of that as we do for our students. And after a few calls, they offered to help the state board coordinate and lead a cross-district committee on school air quality. Similar to the one that was assembled, I think maybe a year or so ago on healthy school facilities. So what that Envision committee was, and I mean, this is all very like preliminary, high level kind of concepting that we kind of discussed. So it wasn't like any official, like any work was really being done. We just kind of like wanted to get the bones of something together. But, you know, about this Envision committee that we've discussed with them, you know, it would like be focused on exploring and discussing those priorities that are like identified and delimited in the SR 25-1 that you guys just passed last month, specifically focusing in on system modernization, inspection and monitoring, alignment with ASHRAE standards and hazard testing, with an ultimate remit to produce an indoor air quality improvement playbook that is adaptive to local LEA's unique challenges and needs. And doing that by being composed of people from across the district, including the state board, DGS, OSSE, the Public Charter School Board, Public DCPS, DME, council, and one principal from every school, from every ward in the district or their deputy, giving it, you know, a very kind of like robust kind of input. And within the kind of partnership to kind of lead and coordinate this committee, kind of like what preliminarily again, like what we just discussed was the state board kind of serving in a secretarial kind of administrative function, kind of coordinating the meetings in and of themselves, bringing people together, circulating materials, pre-reads, and things that come out of these discussions after the groups meet. And then the Browns University School of Public Health staff would really kind of come in to facilitate discussion around the technical, scientific, and fiscal matters related to indoor air quality management. And again, we've had a few calls with them. Darren and our policy fellow Karuna has been able to join, and we even had one with Director Butler. I would recommend that you guys consider taking this on as work to make coordination of this committee official work by assigning it to a committee. You know, I think in addition to the potential benefits to school communities and the state board's reputation building efforts, I think that this would mark an evolution from past projects like the Healthy Facilities Report. It could serve as a template for future stuff that we undertake, kind of in that vein of we listen, we speak, we do. And I think that it is timely with current council interests, given the testimonies that they received and what was it, 2.5 weeks ago, when they received a lot of testimony about schools' indoor air quality. And just if this is something that you guys want to consider, what the team with the Brown School of Public Health have been primed to was, you know, next steps would just be defining the scope and deliverables more comprehensively, drafting, you know, thorough phase plans for how to pursue this work, and, you know, identify invitees and schedule a kickoff meeting for it. And I just wanted to present this to you guys because this was what landed in my inbox. So
There's no funding.
And I will say for this, the goal of this tonight, if you all can decide to move forward, down, just to be very clear about what the ask is here. You all to weigh in, share your opinions. And I'll take like. It don't matter what the staff think, we just want to know what you all would like to do. I just want to put that out there, so if you decide to pursue it or not pursue it. You are not hurting our, like, it's not that kind of situation.
Well, we always appreciate your input though, especially because you guys are helping us do the work.
Mhm.
And I know that coming on as a new member, I know that I heard conversations about the staff and like 3 committees and how even if we were to create another one, that would be too much for you all. So I do want to hear from you all, like, is this something that you all can take on realistically?
I can't speak for other people. I can't speak.
For the president.
Um,
I have strong feelings.
yeah, he's very strong. I will say, so the last time we took on the healthy school facilities work, we received a $10,000 grant from NASB to do so. And part of that $10,000 was used to hire a contractor to help us write the report, do the research and those things. So that is a major difference here. That grant did call for us to have sort of this cross-sectional people from the district, so we did convene those people. I know Jen told me from the deputy mayor's office were in there were people from other parts of district government that had to do with healthy facilities, we had charter school representatives on there along with like representatives from CPS. But again, we also got $10,000 to do that work, and that money paid for, again, us to hire a contractor to do the research and write the report based on what that group decided. So there is no such $10,000 grant for this offer. Yeah. In terms of like just stating the facts.
Did you want me to reiterate what I said for President Patterson? President Patterson, my question was, Director Butler was like, this is our decision, you know, like, he said, you know, this is not up to the staff, you know, you all won't hurt our feelings one way or the other. But I still wanted to uplift their voices because they're helping us do the work. And I know there was a concern initially about, we already have 3 committees. Even if we were to do another committee, it might be too much on the staff. So I just wanted to uplift, okay, if we were to take something like this on, like, is this too much? Is this something that's doable? And then also hearing about like the last time something like this happened, there was a monetary compensation or grant, I should say, that was able to facilitate the work. With this, I don't think there would be any grant funds, I'm assuming, to help facilitate this.
Before there was a $10,000 grant, something to that extent, but there's nothing this time.
Well, not before. Before we were part of a group of states that are involved in a national state board association, like NASB convenes groups of states to do things all the time. They have early childhood, they have literacy stuff. I mean, they did one on healthy school facilities. That is not this. This is someone coming to us. So I will say the NASB thing was also a longer time frame. These folks are presenting something that's based on this, whether or not, you know, this is actual reality, because you know, things look one way, then you put them in and they get run over. But this is supposed to include the fall of 2025, so they have a very
Sure.
which is again.
Representative Goulet.
So I'm going to be blunt about this, and I don't want it to be reflective. You know, you had a great presentation here, and I don't want it to be negatively reflective of the Brown School of Public Health. But we have, should not be something we're doing, and I'll explain why. We have basically 3 levels or layers of activity here. We have things where we have direct statutory oversight, which is our core responsibility, but like graduation requirements, social studies in that. And we really take a deep dive. So that's like a level 2 deep dive. The only thing deeper than that is the agency that implements it. Then we have kind of the high level stuff that we do as a board. I put in that like nurses, facilities, which this would be, special ed transportation, things that are not in our direct statutory purview. So we may do a resolution on that. We may even in some cases introduce legislation. This is taking an issue that is under the purview of the DC Council. It is clearly not, this is what the old school board did. It is not what this school board is supposed to be doing. It is under the council. And we are going down to that level 2 in-depth work on this, the same level of detail that we should give graduation requirements on an issue that's under the council. We are not the ones who should be leading this governmental group of agencies with DGS, the council. It is not us. It should be the council or the mayor, but it is not this body. I don't agree with their statement from a policy that most schools don't meet minimum air quality standards. I just functionally do not agree with that. I think there are incidents in our schools where there are issues from time to time. I think there's always improvement we can be made. I still haven't heard what ASHRAE standards actually requires us to do, even though we've passed a resolution on it. And this is not a priority for me. I'll just be perfectly honest. Like right now, we have really serious issues we're dealing with at a federal level, and our economy is going to be crushed. And when that happens, our debt cap shrinks. So the amount of capital funding we have shrinks. So if we have money, I want to keep the phase 1 modernizations we're doing for schools that haven't gotten a phase 1 modernization. I want to actually make sure we've got space for pre-K and students with disabilities in our schools. I do not care about ripping up working heating HVAC systems that are working. Now, if they're broken or if there's a danger, get them out of there and let's fix them. But this is not what we should be doing. We should be not devoting this much staff time to this. If we're going to do something like this, Representative Johnson Law brings this up every time. If we're going to take a deep dive, let's do into something that's not in our direct statutory purview. I'd put special ed on there. It's under federal investigation, because we're not doing a good enough job there. This is a non-issue. It's not and if they want to do this, great. Go over to DC Council, talk to Janice Lewis George, talk to Chairman Mendelson, and do it over there. That's where it should be done. It should not be done here. It's talking about using all this staff time and member time here. We have more important things to do than this. We should do our job and do it well. This is not it.
Appreciate that. Other comments? Representative Williams.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. I'll be brief. I want to say that I essentially agree with everything that Representative Lilly just said. Particularly, I thought the presentation was great as well. So thank you, Andrew.
Just passing along what can
Yeah.
be that.
Not me personally. He's like, I'm not taking it personally.
I just reported out, guys. I just reported
No,
out.
it's great, but I do think that this is better situated in the council, and that we should just refer it there or communicate that there, because they the Brown School of Public Health has these resources, this expertise, and Janice Lewis George's committee has been very proactive in making sure that this is a priority. It's not something that's not important. I just think it's not best situated for us to be this convening body. So I agree with you, Representative Goulet, and think that we should encourage the work at the council and refer it there.
Representative Paulson.
I would just say, I want us to maintain this same energy when other topics come up. For us to be present with our priorities and looking at the federal and the local landscape. So if we're saying this now, let this go on record so that we'll say this for the other things. I agree, but I think other things have come up and I think other things will come up that are not our priority and should not be our focus. But I agree with you.
Madam Johnson Law.
Thank you, President Patterson. I want to echo Representative Colson, and I just want everyone here to understand. We spent 5,000 hours talking about cell phones, okay? I'm just saying, y'all, of policies that were already in place. 5,000 hours, that's, not literally, but it felt like it was 5,000 hours. And all the different things that we're talking about is when other things come up, we got to keep this same energy.
Stay focused. What's in our purview?
Stay focused was in our purview, but also the different things that are that's affecting our students, that our constituents are also bringing to us. I know Representative Colson talks about homelessness and that she's going to be bringing that up. I know I'm talking about the mental health, again, Representative Goulet's talking about safety. I'm talking about special education. Representative Henderson, I feel like you have so much. the different things that are going on in Ward 5.
I appreciate
So with all of these different things, it's like, again, with things that are not under our purview that we also work on. To
Especially
keep,
when there is no support for our staff. That's like
Yes.
the biggest thing that's sticking
Yes.
out to me.
and I still want to hear Madam Director at the end of all
We
this
have
about,
Alistair off.
about
Okay.
the staffing with all this.
Okay, Representative Henderson, and then I'm coming to you, Representative Chang.
So I do appreciate the idea of like referring the school of public health to the council. I hope that work would be taken up. I do feel like this is, I mean, this came through me, so I experienced this way. This is something that was brought to me from constituents, and so to me, it feels more in the vein of like, we are the voice of public education. This is an issue that came up. I am also convinced that it is a student achievement issue and it is an absenteeism issue. And I also, in Ward 5, we have constant HVAC issues. And so, like, to me, it does come up to like,
Right,
this
to that
is a
level.
serious issue, perpetual issue. So I think, you know, if it were if we could be sure it were a light lift for us to do, I think it would be worthwhile. In this case, it sounds like School of Public Health is offering like expertise in some work, but it would still require work on our part. And so I think probably the route of encouraging them to approach someone else worthwhile. But I do want to stand up for the issue itself as being it's pretty serious. I mean, I'm glad things are better in Ward 3, but you know, certainly in Ward 5, it is
a struggle.
yeah. I mean, I can think of maybe one of our public schools that doesn't perpetually HVAC issues. Just wanted to say.
Any closing comments?
Don't forget Alistair.
I'm so sorry, Representative Chang.
Yes, thank you. First, I want to acknowledge that, yes, we have our statutory roles and responsibilities. I'm looking at them. A lot of our conversations, admittedly, are not focused on these bullets. And
Exactly.
the role that we play, right, around as the only elected voice for education issues in many ways is also, you know, and I think this is an important role that we play, is to raise issues, right? And so Representative Johnson Law, you know, I love working with you. And the reason why the cell phone issue was something that I was pushing for is because it was the #1 issue that came from the Ward 2 Ed Council. So I really, you know, we can agree to disagree, and I do see it as 100% my role to raise the issues of my constituents in the same way that I know you do for yours. And so what I'm hearing from Representative Henderson here, I think, is that this is an issue that we need to raise, and whether or not we do it this way or another way, right, does not discount, I think, the importance of the role that he's playing right now to lift what he's hearing from his constituents.
Agreed. Suggestion.
All right, we'll come to Johnson
I
Law.
was also bring the cell phone issue. So we have things in our board. An issue comes down related to public education, because we are the elected body for public education. Cell phone issue comes down. You know, the issue of indoor air quality comes down. The issue of nursing comes down, things like that. What we do, and what we should appropriately do on those, is we pass a resolution. In some rare instances, we also may choose to do legislation, but usually our goal from that is to hear from the public and to pass a resolution. So I feel like we've given these two important issues the same treatment in a way that they both merit. Now, there's a big difference between doing that process versus what we should be doing for graduation requirements, which is having a very in-depth look at that. Whether it be through a task force or whether because that is what we're supposed to get to that next level on. And the level beneath that is just what the agencies do, which is implement all this stuff. But we should not be going down to that level on things that aren't in our direct statutory purview, if I'm making sense on this. Like cell phones, yeah, important. Legacy emissions, important. Indoor air quality, important. These are important issues. And we're treating them at the level we should. So I don't want to say that we shouldn't do cell phones. We should. We should give it the attention if we've given indoor air quality, and then we should send that to the council, which is actually the body that has the statutory authority over these functions. And then we should step into our role and embrace it, which is like something like graduation requirements, to go to that next level of effort on that. Which is what this is proposing here, is to go to the level of effort we should do on graduation requirements.
I'm reserving my comments until I've heard from the other members. Are there other comments from the members? Second round, so to speak.
Can I go again?
Johnson Law.
Thank you, President Patterson. Y'all are gonna sick me after month 3, I swear. But I don't want this to come off as like harsh, right? But when we look at our statutory responsibilities, yes, they are very clear. But a lot of the issues that our constituents bring to us, do we actually have direct authority over those things? And a lot of times the answer may be directly no. But again, we're our community's advocates. And so even if it may be too much for us to do, okay, well, let's figure out, like you said, okay, how do we get it to council? But how do we partner with council? Like I'm thinking about Representative Henderson. Is there a way for maybe him and like one staff member to be able to help partner with the council to make this happen? That way he is still involved. He had to prayerfully have the support of the council, right? And their staff and their government body, but also saying, my constituents brought this to me and this means a lot to them. And so I don't want us to ever discount when our constituents come to us with an issue, even if we don't have the direct authority to be like, okay, we're going to solve this exactly right here, right now. But we want to show them that we care and that we're listening and that we are being responsive.
And Anna was the one who proposed the resolution, so student representative.
That was Anna.
Representative. But if that's set up over there, what you could do is have members of the board, it could be Representative Henderson, Representative Mayor, whomever sit on that external committee. So we could have members or staff sit on the committee. So the council will be running the committee, not us. But we would have members appointed to that committee. And I think that's the role we should take, external committee, and we're on, so not running it.
So what I've tried to do is just to make sure that we can have a lively conversation, which I always appreciate, kind of, inform, where I would like to take this next. I agree, that this particular subject matter, I think we have done our part with the resolution that we've done. And also how this is coming to us after the fact, so to speak. And we've already done a resolution, heard about it. We've supported that this needs to happen. And for me, I'm in agreement with a lot of our members in the sense of, in this process, this needs to be with support sent to the council. This is not something that we would accept the way that it's being presented to us, but that we can support it being taken to the council, to these, which George, I believe, is the right committee, along with education, and trying to support them in working with the council, who is the next stage of it. If you look back at all the things that we've talked about, whether we're talking about cell phones or legacy or anything else, we did our part. Now it goes to the council. And so as my vice president, we kind of heard quietly, we're talking about process now. And I think the next step in this particular process and the way that it came in from the side is that it goes to the council. So that is what I'm suggesting that we do, that we will support the Brown Public School of Public Health in, taking this to the council, Denise, George, and of course with our chairman of education and making sure that they are supported and trying to present that to them. Thoughts on that vision? Yes, Representative Henderson.
I'd be happy to help if there's a way. Yeah.
Thank you, because I definitely, and I appreciate you being specifically wanting to help, because I hear you and what you're saying about your ward and your schools. And I wanted to make sure that you're being responsive to your communities, your constituents. Thank you. So I support that, and I will also help with that.
So just procedurally, next steps, I think the staff has to close the loop with Brown University. We can connect them to Representative Henderson.
Yeah,
And
that's
you
what I
can
was
send
saying.
an introductory email to Denise Lewis Georges. There's a committee director, I think it goes to them, not necessarily to the council for herself, but to the committee member over like facilities and whatnot. And make sure that they are connected in the conversation, like all three of them, Representative Henderson, the committee director for facilities. And again, us to make that connection and let them know what the board has decided. I think we can close that loop, and that can be an action step for the staff to send that introductory email, and we can take that step with us.
Yeah.
And so we can get that done next week. Thank you.
There may be two other ways. I wouldn't just rule out, but you also have environment with Charles Allen, and you have the committee of the whole of education, I think. Just don't-
Yeah,
don't-
but what I will say to that,
Yeah.
Representative Coulee, is that in our meeting with the chairman, we'll also tell him that we've got this offer that we're going to present it to a council member. So that makes sure that he has it, because at the end of the day, he decides what happened, everything like that. So it's paramount that we first pay, proper process and let him know that this has come to us, that we're going to refer it to, we would like to include it to members, but we want to tell them first. So that's what I'm suggesting, okay? But the first communication goes to the chairman.
Well, Andrew, you and I can touch base so that we can.
Sorry,
make
what
sure
was
we
that
have the
last
right. You and I will connect to make sure we have the right order.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, I appreciate the lively conversation on that particular topic. I'll be quick with my next one, as quick as you guys will allow me to be, which is the performance oversight hearing debrief. Again, I don't think I can overemphasize, and I think I've sent you too many texts at this point, thanking you. Well, you can never thank someone, so let me take that back. The work that this team went into to make sure I had the most comprehensive, and I don't use that word lightly, preparation, testimony, was truly amazing. I don't know if they provided that in the past. I just feel special, okay? So I'm gonna feel special in my own right. I feel special. And I want to thank you guys for preparing me. I think, I received about 4 questions from the chairman. The first one, I believe, as I discussed off the record a little bit, he wanted to know about legacy. He had a feeling about legacy. He wanted some number on legacy, which we did not have, so we could not definitively give him the answer that he was looking for on legacy. We will continue to follow up with him to try to get him some of the numbers and data that he was requesting, but we'll do that. The other 3 questions that I received from him, I believe, he just did a nice job of making sure he knew he was supporting us and we could respond to him, that they have been responsive, whether we were talking about our new HR person and the FTE that was there. He wanted to know a little bit more about that, so we discussed about that. I told him that it increases the integrity of any office when you have your own HR person. They feel like they go to a person that's kind of independent, so that was our response to him. And it's kind of alluding me that other 2 questions.
So in your packet, what you will see that Darren's pulling double through you, checking out.
We love
He
you.
and Karina have actually done a summary. They did a summary of all the public witnesses who testified regarding the state bill. They also did a summary of the questions and responses that we got from Benson. They are included. So, particularly legacy admissions was the one that got the most airtime. He wanted exact numbers on how many legacy admissions were each school, because he's like, he doesn't know the scale of the problem. And so it's like, is this a problem that we need to solve or we don't need to solve? And he had exact numbers for GW and Catholic University.
Which he said was 0.
Impacted by it, so he should.
Again, you can take that out, but then we just tell you.
Yeah,
what
we gonna keep it
questions
here, we gonna keep it here.
Then I-
Go ahead.
And then again, as you can see, he asked about the cell phone policies in school. He asked about the tracking of state standard like the implementation of all the standards that we've passed. And then the agency, the impacts of the HR hire.
And just so you guys know, I'm never gonna be a person that kind of causes division or anything like that between us and especially Aussie. So when he asked the question about implementation, I did say that while there are some things that needs to be, done a little bit better, the coordination needs to be better. We have yet to get that because he definitely is looking for like, are they following through with implementation? Is it done in fidelity? Where are they? Are they updating you and everything like that? So I told him, and we have our meeting coming up soon, that we will continue to work with them to make sure that implementation is done in the manner that it's supposed to be done. Okay. Those were the questions. I don't know if you guys have any other questions for me. Again, I think, and if someone can tell me different, but we, as a group, we got a lot of as the state board. We got, and other people, because I was there for quite some time. I watched before getting there, and I watched after I left as well and got back to my office. The state board throughout got a lot of compliments. What we're doing, how we're engaging, is being a reward is the best way that I can say it. So I want everybody, and I want to compliment everybody on the work that they're doing and continue to do the engagement that you're doing. It's making an impact. We did talk about student voice as well. We pointed out that student voice has basically, we've increased threefold, so to speak, in the sense that we went from 30 to 90 as far as representatives. We hit on that. So my testimony was lengthy, but I believe it answered all the questions before they can ask them.
Very long, I didn't realize.
And he made a comment about, he said, so you're gonna read your whole testimony into it, because it went about 5 to 6 minutes to read it into.
Well, they don't give us a time limit.
Yeah, they don't give us a time, so.
We need to give you some slides.
So, I felt that everything that was in it was relevant. And answered questions probably, and I know how they were probably putting this together. Some of the questions that they had asked us, it answered them upfront. So it made less for having to dig into the questions and everything like that. They sent how many questions over to us?
They sent us 50 questions.
50 different questions.
Everything, just FYI, they asked for attendance records of members at meetings. They asked for every MOU that the agency has signed for the last few years. They asked for copies of all reports that have been produced from the agency. Things that they had not asked for before, but also a record of all spending, all travel, who traveled and how much it cost. It was very
in depth.
It was in depth, and in the 2.5 years that I've done this 2 other times, like 2 other budget cycles, we had 0 questions.
And so what I will say to that, so if she's telling you the number of questions, they had question and tab for me to go to in that binder.
You better come on with it.
So
It's not, I should be very, very clear that the staff did that 90% bulk of that work. Roma, even though he was out of the country, pushed to get those questions early so that he and his team could work. But honestly, I think a lot of the questions were focused on the financials. I think they're just doing a very hard look at every single agency.
And so they're doing that to the PCSB as well.
And so because the budget season's going to be
Budget season, yeah.
But Roma and his team pulled all those reports. They wanted to know for budget year variances from 2 or 3 fiscal years ago, how much was spent, how much was all the details. And we have a team that was able to pull that information together accurately with it took time, obviously, but we were able to do that. And so I think 90% of that was Roma and his team, with the other, I think 90 plus 90, other half of that coming from Jen and her team on all the programmatic aspects. They wanted every single resolution and what it was for. These were long, just responses to the questions without the attachments was over 30 pages. So the staff, and we spend a lot of time just in editing. They want to know how we work with every single member of the ed cluster, examples. They
So it was
It's a lot.
it was a lot, and I truly appreciate the work that went into it. I believe we have a question from Representative Henderson.
Actually, a comment. So
A comment.
I did watch the testimony. I just want to say that both you, President Patterson, and the Ombudsman and Chief Student Advocate did a great job
Yes.
of representing those respective offices.
Thank you so much, sir.
To you and to the staff.
Thank you so much, Mr. Staff. So with that being said, and it seems like there's no more questions, I'm going to now be turning to Representative Ting. Oh, correct, wait. No, before I get to you, Representative Ting, I do have SR 24-4 appointing representatives to external committees. This is going to be short too, because I need you guys to sign. I said this at the outset, I need you to sign up. I need you to indicate to the staff where you would like to support external committees so that we can do the resolution for the public meeting. So I'm gonna emphasize that again, and send to you. Please.
And I will resend it, so it was sent in the original email about, with the retreat follow-up. So I will resend that out. So there are 2 members who've already done it, let's, I don't wanna call them names, but there are some people who've already done it. So we just need to other people, but, and what you will see in there is a link to all, like, the descriptions of all the external committees. Yeah, so we had to go back and vet our list, because the list we had last year, and some of those committees don't exist anymore, whatnot, but we had our, A&O fellow go back and actually find updated contact information and updating all the descriptions. So all of those are in there, and I'll resend that link around.
Thank you. So now I will move to Representative Ting with SR 25-5, promoting DC STEM, supporting technology, equity, and math. Representative Ting.
I'm just off this. Sorry, I'm very ill. I'm only here because I should probably be here in person. I apologize. I'm in the corner. Let me see. So I guess I should just give you guys updates on this. So at the start, I raised this at a working session, and then Representative Thompson told me to bring it to the SAC. And then at the SAC, they generally supported the idea of giving like homeless or on SNAP or on CHAMP, which is another federal program like SNAP, or Word of the State, access to a graphing calculator basically if they're taking an AP math class. And there was division on whether to have LEAs on whether to charge a fee if like a student uses it and stuff like that. But there was like divisions, and I worked I worked all their feedback onto exactly how to go about this, and the finer details into the resolution draft. We worked on this a little bit. The thing you see in the Dropbox isn't the latest one. For example, it actually costs only half as much as I listed there, because only half of DC public school, only half of DC students are considered economically disadvantaged, not 100%. I elected to make that calculation, and then I added that back in. So there will be amendments. Anything else? Working with Representative Johnson to also try to include provisions for special education students to help them be able to use their calculators and learn that, because it is pretty hard to figure out. Nothing else really. Any questions?
Questions? Representative Goulet.
Great work on this. You talked a little bit, you kind of left the issue unsettled about charging a fee. Is there any way between now and the public meeting that we could decide on that? Because you kind of punt that issue. And I feel like requiring people to put down a deposit would potentially create an issue. I don't know if I have a solution today, but is there any way to try to continue to just think through that? And other members may have a better answer than I do on that, but I love the kind of the resolution. It's just on lines 53, 57.
Yeah.
We can come back to it. I'm not expecting to solve it tonight, but if there is a way to try to reach clarity on what we're recommending, because we kind of feed that unsettled with that.
Other comments?
Well,
Go ahead.
yeah, so for 53 to 57, we made that a whereas clause because we're not sure whether the State Board of Education has the ability to like override like the LEA's decision to whether to have like a deposit fee, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we definitely don't have the authority to do that,
Okay.
but the, what we,
You can still make a recommendation, even if the
yeah,
board.
it's just, we're making a kind of a bit of a recommendation.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah, no,
we can,
what you do is you're just discussing your discussion of it. It's not a resolve clause, so I retract any, do anything with it. It's not a resolve clause. You're discussing what you talked about with it. So as long as it's not a resolve clause, let's move on.
okay. And then I am 100% open to amendments and feedback.
Or other statements?
Well, I just had a clarifying question. And don't judge me, like, I look young, I just haven't been to high school in some years. So don't students need these type of calculators, not just for like AP Calc and AP Statistics? Like, don't they need them for others? So is there a way to maybe include those other subjects in the resolution language?
Yeah, I would think so, because I would also, and only reason I know this is I now sit on the L's and things I'm learning. I would also venture to say that you may find there larger breadth of students because some middle schools are now like teaching algebra 1.
I used a graphing calculator in middle school.
Yeah, and so I don't think it's just high schools. So
Okay.
I'm just like, so if you were in a school like my feeder middle school,
Mhm.
there are some 7th and 8th graders who are taking algebra 1 before they get to high school. And so by the time they get to high school, they're like in advanced geometry and they don't need to take algebra anymore. So
Got it.
they need the graphing calculators sooner. So just think there just may be a broader audience. But also don't know how many middle schools are doing that. So I know there are some. I think like the McKinley Middle School, they offer like some of their 8th graders take advanced mathematics. I know Stewart Hobson does, I'm sure some of the other schools do.
I mean, yeah, just following that. I mean, what I wanted to do was focus on like the most pressing thing and then, because I wasn't sure about, I didn't want to dilute this with like support for other things. For example, for the algebra 1 thing and stuff. Like, yeah, like when I took algebra 1 in 8 years ago, I was using like a scientific calculator, which was like 15-20 bucks. But then the difference is that like, like a 20 bucks calculator versus the calculator that's cost 6 times, but like $130 is enough for like food and like some, it's quite a hefty chunk compared to like $20 graphic calculator. I mean, a $20 scientific calculator for those. And then for the reason I chose AP over IB is I think there are only like 2, 3 or 4 schools that have, oh wait, there are, what? I feel like IB is a lot less prevalent within the DC school ecosystem, whereas AP math courses, like I think every high school has to offer one or something along those lines. So I wanted to tackle those first. So I don't really have statistics on IB.
Well, thank you. Were there any other questions for Representative Ting on this resolution? So from what I'm hearing is that with some correction or some minor adjustments and things,
I can make it cost half as much.
we would send it to to be voted on at the next public meeting.
That's a vote up to you. Yeah. But to vote to send to the public meeting. Still 5 of y'all, because ain't nobody else online, so I don't know that. There's nobody else online.
There's still.
But it's just y'all are still in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Representative Chang is in public internet.
Am I in the right one?
you ready?
Yes, we're ready now.
Am I in the right one?
Representative Ting,
Hi.
vote to put it on the agenda,
Yeah.
yes, okay, aye, yeah. Representative Colson.
Aye.
Representative Boulay.
Aye.
Representative Henderson.
Aye.
Representative Johnson Long.
Aye.
Representative Vice President Williams.
Aye.
President Pepsi.
Aye. Congratulations.
Resolution 25-5 will be on the agenda.
Okay.
Okay, now,
President Patterson, can I have a quick point of clarification? Representative team on the draft, I think it says SR 25-4. Should it be 25-5?
I think yes.
So the staff will correct it, and I think we keep track of it.
Yeah.
We'll fix it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Because it's a lot, y'all. I'm just want to make sure I'm like, wait, now, I'm on the right one. Okay.
All right, I'm coming right back to you, Representative, because you're busy. Which I love as a student representative. You are putting a lot of us to shame. SR 25-6 calling for public funding for the public charter school athletic association.
So this one is a little bit more kind of all over the place, but essentially, I started working on this at the same time as my calculator one. This one isn't by me, but it's by the same youth and government association that I lead. It's not, whatever, it's program. The main points of feedback that definitely needs to be worked on are we're still getting more information coming from the organization that we're talking about, the BCAA, which is the organization that we're trying to fund so that they can have full-time staff who coordinate the events, which is what DC public schools has for that like equality there. And I'll be proposing amendments for that. There's some other minor amendments and touch-ups and other things to do. And one of the major things is that we're still looking into exactly how the funding would like be greenlit. Like we're trying to figure out whether the organization itself would be incorporated within the DC government, or would it be a separate entity, or would there be like a new like position created and then filled by like this? We're looking, like, I'm not sure exactly how it works, but the president of the PSAA, all she really wants is to have enough funding to have people who can like schedule and do events. We'll be bringing a lot of people to the March 19th working session.
Public meeting.
Public meeting, sorry.
What's a lot of?
Not as many as last week, or Hannah. So we'll be bringing maybe like 2 to 5 of the youth and government kids as normal, and then maybe 5 to 10 adults, the adults being the like leaders of the PCSA so they can testify. And then we might bring an entire sports team and all of the basis sports kids who do sports, because basis is but you know, they might not testify, they might just sit in the back with their like jerseys on. Okay, I'll talk to Nick about.
Select a
maybe-
couple of representatives. Anyway.
Well,
We can
before
help
we get
you.
to the public.
Right.
Yeah, we can help you.
I think, I have some concerns about the resolution.
I
don't
have
know
some
if-
too as well.
Yeah.
I have some, I'm going to hold mine right now, and I'm gonna tell you
Yeah.
because I actually, at the LEA that I work at, actually I'm over athletics.
Oh, really?
And so I have a number of comments about that. I actually had to hire 2 athletic trainers, and I also had to hire a athletic director. So I kind of have a little bit of understanding of this, but I'm gonna let Representative Boulay go first before I add some comments to this and what I think about this.
I'll start with just the basic things. If we could, if this does move forward, you could take out the salary, like
Yeah.
specifically calling out 7 of which are paid over $90,000. I just don't think that needs to be. And then we capitalize into the DC Office of the Deputy Mayor for Education, that's also be capitalized. And then the last change should be on line 36. Is that being incorporated under DC government? We don't really incorporate it. I think what you mean to say with that is it would be an agency within DC government, like the current athletic association is. It's a standalone agency, but it would be incorporated. It's kind of a term of art that we would use to like actually form a corporation. I love the intent of this. Like, I really do. I think expanding sports out of school kind of opportunities is really good and something that we should be doing for all of our students. So I'm 100% supportive of the spirit of this. My question to you though is, have we specifically reached out, you and the staff here at the board to speak and sit down with the public charter school board and the public charter athletic association, just to kind of make sure that this is what they want and that we're moving in the same direction that they want to go with this? Have we been able to have that conversation yet? And if we haven't, then maybe giving this a little bit more time to have that conversation. So that's kind of the question, and it's not to put you on the spot, but just to see if we're at a stage where this is ready to move ahead to a public meeting yet. So have we been able to do that yet?
The staff has not met with the public charter school board or discussed this with the public charter school board. That I can tell you.
How about the leadership of the athletic association? Have we met with?
The charter athletic association?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure what the student and government folks have done, but I know the SBO team has not had those conversations.
I mean, if you're willing to, what I would love to see is to have, obviously if our president wants to join in that too, but have a meeting with the staff, the student representatives who are sponsoring this and those two entities, just so that we can make sure that this is the approach they're looking for. Because I feel like that would really be beneficial and an important step.
I agree. And I think for me, the piece that stands out is that we also should be very clear about the description of the DCIAA. Because, and all this I said is because they sit on the panel with us when we do performance oversight testimony, and they are not just DC public schools. All of the private schools are also included in that.
Right.
So they are
Public
not
charter
just
too, right?
DCPS, and it's not that they only focus on DCPS. And also, if you look at their budget, they also fundraise. That will come out again. They sit with us for the last 2 years, so I know that because they always ask, the mayor always takes their fundraising money and he asks the chairman to put it back. This happened 2 years in a row. And so, but they like fundraise over like $100,000, like so that they can keep their staff. And so I think it's just like we got to be clear, like representation of what they do here, and that so all of their money does not come from DC government. And so just to make sure that I don't want people to think that this is so, because like all the private schools, they're talking about Sidwell Friends, and so I don't know if they're charging a fee to the private. I have no idea sort of what their connection is, but they're also running the campaign that tracks NIL deals for all these student athletes from the private schools and DC public schools. So it's not, there may be other streams of income that are not just like local tax dollars that are going in to pay for the staff and the running of the team. And I think having a better understanding of their operations and what they do cover may help craft a different resolution, where maybe we're saying it's different. Maybe we're adding a staff member that can then help coordinate that as a part of the larger groups, but for charter schools. But again, just I think exploring, having a deeper understanding of how they're set up and what their function is can better inform the resolution.
May I suggest then that, after everyone has an opportunity to speak, that Representative Tain, if you'd be willing to just move a motion to postpone this rather than voting on it today, if you could move a motion to postpone it till the next working session, I think it would allow that conversation to take
And
place.
I'll give him that opportunity to do so. What I wanted to say, I hope I'm not jumping in front of anyone else, is the PCSB have to take some responsibility for the PCSAA. They really haven't had a lot of conversations with them that I know of, as far as really, how they support them and what they are having. I appreciate that the DCIA has done what they've done in working with the charter schools and providing them, the league that they're in, the trophies, everything that happens and stuff like that. Because there is a disparity because of just how charter schools came into being between fields and a lot of other things. How many can afford?
They came up with it.
Right. There's a huge, disparity in fields and and everything that deals with between charters and traditional schools. Because traditional schools have always taken that into consideration, whereas a lot of charter schools do not take sports into consideration until after they've taken, of course, their academic and what is in their charter itself. That being said, that's why you see somewhat what appears to be some inequities. But at the same time, what I want to say is the PCSB, if for schools that are chartered through them, needs to address this issue on a bigger level. And I think what I am suggesting here is that conversation, as you talked about, Representative, that needs to happen first. You need to also speak with them as what has been the history of the discussions with the PCSB on formalizing their association for sports. And what is the next level that they want to support them? Because right now, they depend on the DCIA. They basically just say, support us by funding everything for us and putting it together and coordinating it. Yes, we'll work with your association, but you guys do the heavy lifting. And this is what happened. I actually know people who are on the board that say they want support from the PCSB because they have friends that's on the DCIA who are saying like, okay, can y'all get some support from your side of the house to help us do what we're doing? So with that all being said, I agree with you, Representative Goulet, that there needs to be some discussions prior to us taking any action on this and moving this that would help this resolution immensely. That's what I'm suggesting.
Sure. I have the author of the resolution. I'm texting him all these concerns right now. Can I just get a quick confirmation to make sure I took notes of everything? So I heard, so let me know if there's anything I missed. So I heard taking out the calling out of the salary over 90,000, capitalize DC Office of Education deputy. See if that's general. SBOE staff should probably meet the PCSAA people, which honestly is really easy since she's like 2 blocks down that way, so then we can that's pretty fast. Describe DCIAA more in the language. The generally call for we should meet with the PCSB and figure out how to integrate and like what the responsibilities should do with that. Because there's inequalities within charter schools. And is there anything else? And the resolution author agrees with postponing it because there are a lot of things to like finalize this one.
And I wonder, because it was referred originally to the SAC, they brought it back. And I think, is it at a level now that does it need to go to the student engagement experience committee be referred there?
I would definitely support that because Representative King is also a member of
Yeah.
the committee. So
with Representative Lay.
So I would ask that we recommitted, do a motion to recommit to the C committee at this time to then this matchup.
So I am.
Need a second?
Yeah. Second.
Oh, a motion of clarification? Or,
Yeah.
am I allowed to have, is the resolution author allowed to, as like an external person, join that SE meeting just for that? No, okay.
No, there are no external participants in the board working session.
Okay.
They can follow
At a
online
committee
in the
meeting,
meeting,
right.
but they cannot participate.
Yeah, I'll just be texting.
His question was a committee meeting.
Oh, a committee meeting, yes.
Oh, wait, so
The committee can invite external people to their
so
committee meetings.
So yes, you can come to that meeting.
invite.
Yeah,
Okay, so I'll do that.
but the
But that-
chair of your
have a
committee.
chair.
will-
I'll
take a
ask
vote.
them, yeah.
So let's take a vote.
Happy to
Okay.
have them attend the committee meeting,
Okay.
assuming that that's allowed.
Yes.
I appreciate that, but first I want to make sure, and I see you, Johnson, but we do have a vote. It has been seconded. I want to make sure that we follow doing the right thing. Do you have something that's germane to before we take the vote?
I was just asking, can you guys just repeat it out loud? Because I think I got confused in the back and forth. I'm sorry.
So the vote before the board is to take SR 25-6 and refer to the C committee. And person moving it forward for the public agenda. So that's, and then Eric moved the motion and Vice President Lee seconded.
All right, so call the roll, man.
Representative Ting,
Aye, or yes.
We love you so much.
Representative Paulson. Aye. Representative Boulay.
Aye.
Representative Henderson.
Aye.
Representative Johnson Law.
Aye.
Vice President Williams.
Aye.
President Paris.
Aye.
All right. SR 25-6, calling for public funding for public charge level electrical station has been remitted to the C committee, Student Engagement and Experience Committee.
Thank you very much for that conversation. Now we move to SR 25-7, State Board Authority Working Group Resolution. Turn it over to the members.
So the resolution mainly does the job of showing the past work of the board on this issue. To go back to the engagement that was led by Representative Thompson, which resulted in both a resolution and then a report that the board voted on. And so it also fell in such a way that one version of the board voted on the resolution, the next iteration of the board voted on the report. So just establishing that history. And then the history of the working group and how we zeroed in on the three recommendations from the governance report that we have discussed. And so you'll see, first time you see those recommendations, it's the recommendations as they were written in the report and in the resolution or the previous resolution. And then discussing that the working group discussed those recommendations, and then the second time, the last time to be it resolved, shows the recommendations as we decided to report them out to the full board. So the difference there is that in the second bullet point, the authorizing the state board to initiate policy does not have the portion from the report that says and to amend policies brought to the state board. Because based on discussion, we removed that part. And so that's the resolution portion. And so, the working group is interested in your feedback on those three recommendations. And then you have before you the recommendations that also includes some of the procedures that we discussed, which are incorporated more fully in the legislation that Representative Boulay has. So we want your feedback on the three recommendations as written, and also some of the policies that are in the draft legislation language. And I think correct me or you feel differently, Representative Boulay, please say so. But I think I would ask you especially to look at some of the timing language that we have, because a lot of those things we weren't, it wasn't like it has to be 1 year here or 2 year here, but we did want to suggest something, for you to react to. And maybe the other thing would be, we would discuss for different decisions, whether it needs to be a super majority or simple majority. So those might be things in particular.
I want to keep these, if I can, because they're listed separately here between G and H. Focus on the resolution more so right now, and what we want to talk about with the resolution, if there's changes, so that we can take appropriate action after that. And then we move to the actual legislation, which is number 8. So on the resolution comments.
I just have a quick clarifying question. I guess a brief statement. I generally support everything that is in the resolution. I think that the main questions that we're still figuring out are not necessarily addressed in the resolution, but I understand why. The end of the first page of the resolution, which you had mentioned, Representative Henderson, but I wasn't clear on, with it does say here to amend policies brought to the state board by OSSI.
So what line are you on? You're on
It's like the third,
36 or
yeah,
35?
35.
Yeah. So that's just capturing in this resolution, capturing the history. That's the language that was in the governance report and in the resolution that the board passed previously.
Okay.
When you see it at the end, at the bottom, the therefore resolved, that's what we're bringing to you now.
Mhm.
Because based on the committee's discussion, we decided to remove that portion. So that was the decision we made, and now we bring it to the full board.
Mhm.
That's something we want to discuss, that we should discuss.
Representative Delight.
Yeah, I just want to thank Representative Henderson. You did an amazing job writing up this resolution. It was really a pleasure to serve you and Representative Rose Thompson on the working group. I know it was, we put a lot of thought into this. We're really now looking for feedback from the other members on this. I know that there was even, I think Representative Williams, you mentioned one that you maybe thought shouldn't be a super majority in the initial discussions, and we ultimately went with one, but now I think we come back and we have that discussion as a board. I will say that, like, on the amendment issue, we talked a lot about that, and we tried to exercise, I think, the type of restraint, like in the statute, was specifically called out to be an approval body. Now, we can always disapprove something. If something is omitted or included that's so offensive that we can't support it, we could always tell OSSI, we're going to disapprove this if that's not in there. And we felt that power, if it really meant enough to us, was important enough to have there, but we didn't need to go that extra step of making policy from the days. And I think that could open up Pandora's box and we kind of take us out of our envisioned statutory role, which was the approval of this policy. So we tried to exercise that type of restraint. I can go through the timelines when we get to the bill. Everything in the bill is identical to the resolution. There's nothing different between the two. And I'll kind of go through why we picked certain timelines, but again, as Representative Henderson mentioned, we weren't wedded to them. We just wanted to ensure we thought logically through each timeline. So I'll look at it and give it the bill.
Okay, thank you, Representative Henderson.
Just to add to the discussion we had about the amendments, that like another portion of that is the thinking that if we are allowed to initiate policy, it removes the ability of OSSI to like if there was something that we just object to and so vote against something, OSSI couldn't. So currently OSSI could just not bring it back. But if we have the ability to initiate, then we can insist that they bring it back. And so it's less critical that we have to amend it.
Are there other comments?
Well, I just want to clarify that I'm understanding this correctly, and I do appreciate all the work of the committee. I thought this has been very substantive and fast moving, and I'm on a personal capacity very encouraged by the bill that Councilmember Parker is introducing on, similar on the topic, but with some differences. So I do not see the particular years specified in the resolution, which I'm fine with. I just want to make sure that is accurate.
Yeah, that's in the legislation.
That's in the legislation,
but
but not in the resolution. Okay, yeah, so I have no issues with the resolution as is.
I wonder if it would be helpful, because I was reading something that got to me, that in that handout that's in here, that talked about the implementation, there are particular parts that talk about where the code needs to be updated. Is that represented in the legislation piece too?
Yeah, we can go through, I'm not going to try to do a deep dive through every provision of the code to try to catch every.
Exactly.
Where the state board was. I mean, we can put what's in there and there, but that's really something council.
Yeah.
Okay, and so, if I may, if we have kind of like, let's see some other questions on the resolution, and then we'll move to the legislation. I'm going to ask for a vote to approval public meeting. I'm ready for a move a motion, if I can get a second. Second. It has been seconded by, Mr. Henderson. And I would like to call the roll. Yes, ma'am.
Just want to clarify exactly what this means. So based on what we received today, we are now taking a vote for this to be at the public meeting.
Right, the resolution right now.
Resolution.
And next, we're gonna talk about the legislation.
Point of clarification.
Yes.
And this is just a draft resolution, so we're not expecting that every member of the board, agrees with everything in here. So there's an opportunity still in SharePoint
Right.
to propose, amendments and recommendations, and we can provide a revised draft.
Over the next-
When's our deadline for a revised draft?
Yeah, these dates are gonna be critically important, so please.
Please, no repeats of last.
So just to be clear, if they can. So essentially what this is telling us, the meeting is on March 19th.
Right.
All edits and final things need to be in before noon on the 14th, because we posted the agenda with the final copies of all the rest, anything that's been voted on, I'll post it online
Not
that
being funny.
afternoon.
I'm not being funny, but say that date.
So the 14th. And so what the staff and I will ensure that we do, when we send out the reminders to you all, so you all can know that there's an action item, to put the links to the SharePoint links to all the things that you all can comment with. But also you all can decide not to do that, you all can decide to have another meeting, whatever you would like. But I mean, we will put the links in so that people can go in and make edits starting, we'll try to get this out tomorrow, because it is Thursday. Because you just send out the day after the working of the like follow-up of this meeting, so that you all will have those links. And just know that there is no reason to send both, like you can send them both at the same time, you do not have to. Like the legislation, you don't have to vote on them at the same time. That could be the preference of this body, but you say it's not required that you vote on both of them at the same time, like the same purpose. It's not a
That was the-
requirement.
Okay, that was gonna
So
be
you
my
all can
question.
decide whether or not you want to do that, that is up to the board,
So I appreciate that question. We have a
vote.
vote on the floor. I would like to conduct that vote. That's comment.
No.
Okay. Call the roll, please.
Vote to add the SR 25-7 to the public meeting agenda. Representative Chang.
Aye.
Representative Colton. Representative Goulet.
Aye.
Representative Henderson.
Aye.
Representative Johnson Law.
Aye.
Vice President Williams.
Aye.
President Patterson.
Aye.
SR 25-7 will be added to the agenda.
Okay, now we'll go to the legislation itself. So State Board Authority working with legislation, we now can talk about.
Yeah, I mean, this is.
I know they mirror.
Yeah, it's identical to the resolution. I want to address the point though that Executive Director Butler just raised, and I think it's an important one, is that if we decide not to move forward with the bill, I'll move to table the resolution. And the reason is as follows: we shouldn't be adopting a resolution if we're not sure about things, because like they've got to be identical. Like, so if we say, well, we're not sure that this issue is right or something, we just solve that in the resolution. They can't be different from each other. So they've got to be the same, because like we don't want to pass the resolution and then say, oops, we should change that in the bill. It's got to mirror what's in the resolution when we send that over. So we should either wait on both or do both, but we shouldn't pass a resolution. Yes.
Well, I disagree because I think there's somewhat nuanced because we are not, I agree that we don't want to contradict ourselves,
Correct.
right? Like I want to avoid that situation. And like, I think the resolution, if passed, shows a clear statement of support for the particular recommendations, and the recommendations are clear. There's 3 of them, right? How they get implemented with regards to some of the questions we are considering, with regards to the threshold, with regards to the timelines, with regards to what, triggering mechanism happens if, depending on certain scenarios. I think those still are critical things that need to be fleshed out. I think I think in my view, those could be, we wouldn't necessarily be changing any of the recommendations. We're just considering how to specify their implementation in the legislation. And I think there's a timeliness factor right now to consider.
I see your point on that.
Yeah,
So, yes. So I agree with that element of it. I am feeling like, though, here's what we do want to do on this, if we can get our ducks in a row on this, is there's now been a bill proposed, that's before council. The likely process that will take place is if the chairman decides to move on this issue, which he may not, he may decide, I don't want to pick this up right now because I'm concerned about federal issues or whatever. But he would likely schedule both bills for hearing at the same time, and then probably pass some version that melds, because he ultimately controls the bill at that point. He'll pass a version that melds our ideas in with Representative Parker's and then do his own thing.
Councilmember Parker.
Yes, not Representative. Exactly. So I think it is beneficial for the board to put its position out there in legislation too, so that way the chairman then has both bills before him. There can be a hearing, there can be public testimony at the same hearing, and then, you know, ultimately the chairman will do what he does and put them together. So I think we do have that matter of urgency that if there's a bill that's sitting over there, we want our bill there too, so the position of the board is known. I'll go through just really quickly what this does.
Robert Harris.
Just real quickly.
Yes.
I do hope, and we'll find out if how close we are on agreeing. Just do want to point out that the resolution does refer to legislation in the appendix, so if they did get detached, we would need to address that. Take that. Thank you. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, no problem. So I'll go through briefly. I'll start with the easy issue first, and then we'll work to the harder one. The one thing, and I'll do a quick oral crosswalk between this and Representative Parker's vote. So the first issue that this addresses, that this does not, which I think is something that we should put forward and support, is the issue of getting great weight. This recommends that state board decisions receive great weight. I took the exact language from the A and C statute and I put it in here as a new subsection F. So I just mirrored their language. And then the real point of great weight is that they have to explain to us if they choose not to follow what we recommend. Now, I chose in here a timeline of 60 days. In the statute, it doesn't specify, it just leaves it there. So I think 60 days. If people feel that there's a different timeline that would be beneficial, let me know. I thought 30 seemed too tight, 60 seemed reasonable for them to provide a written explanation. So that is issue one. That is not in the Parker bill. Issue two is not also in the Parker bill. That is the issue of data. So if we request data from OSSI, you know, we and I'll point to the specific page where this appears, so you can see it. It appears on if you go to page 2, it's the little number 2 there. So we can request if we want to request data, we can obviously do it as individual members now. And I made clear, you see in C, that this is not in any way to be interpreted as precluding a member from writing OSSI and them submitting things without you know, formal process. But if we send a letter signed by 5 or more board members, that would initiate this step. So we feel like we haven't been heard as an individual member. 5 members sign a letter and say, OSSI, we need this data. Or it could be even DCPS. DCPS, we need this data. The only thing we specify, it's got to be educational thing. So we can't go pester like DIMPED or something like that for something that has nothing to do with our mission. So 5 members sign a majority. If within 15 days, they don't provide the data, or they just say, sorry, we decline your request, then the state board has the authority to require the data be submitted. We would have to do a state resolution. In this case, we put a supermajority out here. Representative Williams, this is the one you thought maybe should be a simple majority when you discussed that. We did ultimately go with a supermajority. We felt like if it was a reasonable request, it wouldn't be hard to get a supermajority on the issue. And then this provides within 15 days of transmission to the agency. So there could be a negotiation where we pulled off transmission if we felt like it was something that they didn't have yet or they needed additional time. But in all likelihood, we wouldn't have gone to this length if we felt like they needed. So if members could just look at those two timelines, this allows them 15 days to comply with the initial request in the letter, then another 15 days after we pass a resolution to comply. We felt those were reasonable timelines as a working group, but members could weigh in if they did. There's not a right or wrong answer on it. The last issue follows the exact same process, and this is the issue of initiating policy. And I think it's important to kind of go with the timelines that, or explain the timelines we went with this, because we tried to look at the maximum amount of time you need for something, which would be like a social studies standards or a graduation requirements, to make sure we weren't creating an unrealistic timeline for OSSI. So if there was a decision where a majority of the members felt like a policy needed to be initiated on behalf of OSSI, members of the state board could start that by sending a letter with 5 members signed on that says, please submit the following policy to the state board. Let's say it's math. We want to look at math. We say submit new math standards, state board. Now, if OSSI does not initiate that process within 1 year, or does not submit the policy within 2 years, because we went with a year timeline because there could be other things in the queue. So we want to give OSSI time to ensure that they have resources to do it, because they in some cases need to have the capacity. That way you'll cross into a new fiscal year. A year should give them time to provide the staff resources to initiate something even as large as social studies standards. Now, it also may require them to get outside consultants and things like that. So we really wanted to be very thoughtful and mindful of the fact that this could require, additional resources in the new fiscal year. So that's why we went with a year for them to initiate the process. And then another year then to complete the process. And I think social studies took about 9 months, if I'm remembering correctly.
Longer,
But
Longer,
about a year,
longer.
longer than a year.
Yeah, it was a very long time. It was like-
Extended
did
twice.
standards,
started
then they
before I
restarted the
Right.
standards
Yeah.
because they were
Right,
not
got
happy
extended.
with
It literally
the.
got extended twice.
Yeah, so it
For
was-
community
Like
engagement,
the-
stuff like that. So that's as a reference point.
Over a year.
It's a
And that's
little
what
bit
we
different.
wanted to do.
It's a little bit different, but
we
I
picked a
believe
year.
a year
That's
under
what we-
normal circumstances. We had, social studies hadn't been redone in 17 years.
Yeah.
So that's a different, the dynamics and something of that nature. But, I like the year.
Yeah, we
Go
settled on another year because we felt like that would give them a full year then to complete the process.
Okay.
And the reason we felt we needed to specify that is because we didn't want a situation where it started something and then they just dropped it. So they had to complete it. And then, so if they don't do that, then we have the power to initiate by a 2/3 resolution a requirement that they submit the policy. So if they refuse to take those steps. Now, once policy is initiated, then they have, so let's say we pass the resolution. They then have 1 year to transmit the policy and then 2 years to complete. So it's the same timeline. So if they don't start, but again, you got to, so if they blow us off for a full year, and they say, we're just not doing this, we can then go ahead and make them do it. But then they still do need the time to ramp up the resources. Because if you don't give them those resources, they're gonna say fiscal impact, we can't do it, we gotta hire consultants, we don't have staff allocated for this activity. And if it's something like the menstrual health standards, that's probably crying wolf, but if it's something like social studies standards, that's a very real concern. That they do need time to staff up with resources, consultants and that stuff. So we tried to be really thoughtful about this. I mean, it could, in the worst case scenario, take 3 years to mandate a policy, which is a long time. But if we short circuit that, then we're also potentially gonna run into some objections to the process. And hopefully none of this will ever be needed. Because hopefully if they get that letter with 5 members signing on, they'll agree to do it. And if they just flat out say no, we can start right away. So if they say no, go pound sand, we can start the process immediately. We can move immediately to a resolution. So that's what we felt were reasonable timelines on this. The only difference between this process of initiation with what Councilmember Parker has is if OSSI says no under his, it then goes to the council to decide whether or not to initiate. I'm not really, I think ours is a superior process because it keeps it, like, we don't have a lot of responsibility as a state board. And I really do believe that we should keep this process in our control, not shifting it over to DC Council. We like, and that's the bill.
All right. With that being said, Representative, Vice President.
Thank you. So yeah, I also appreciate the thoughtfulness of all of this and trying to think what is best. I think the difference with Councilmember Parker wanting to have the council be able to play a role if OSSI does not respond is not necessarily because he thinks that process is best, but because he thinks that it is most politically viable amongst all council members. So I think there's room for change there too in the process. I think I'm on board with almost all of this. I do have a different, broader vision for like us as a state board. I think that this is still an incremental change in many ways, and I don't see us needing to be limited by not being able to amend policy. I'm okay with not having us recommend that now, but I think it would be better for our city if we did have that authority. But in terms of this piece, the only thing that I would want to see shift in terms of the language of the bill would be the thing that concerns me is the 3-year timeline overall for OSSI. So I would want, if we do transmit something to the agency, and OSSI takes the full year for whatever reason to respond or whatnot, I would then want them to, I would want the statute to read that they have to submit that policy to us within the next year. So that by the time we initiate a policy, we're giving them overall 2 years to be able to move that process. And if we wanted to be able to extend that, or we needed to be able to extend that, we don't, then that'd be fine too. But I think allowing for a year in which we may or may not get a response in worst case scenario, and then giving them 2 years on top of that means that before this even takes into effect, we could be giving them 3 years for a policy, which is
Almost a whole.
which is almost our whole term. Exactly. So I think we are being varied, and that would be the one tweak that I would want there to just say, hey, if there are extenuating circumstances that if they needed 2 years for adoption, fine. But I think 1 year of consideration and 1 year of actually doing the work should be sufficient time. So that'd be my one shift.
Yeah, Mr. Slauson.
So that's a great point. And I can only speak as an individual. I can't speak for the other the committee members, but one thing we could consider then is, and I saw this in Councilmember Parker's bill, is he had a 90-day time frame for them to respond. So what we could do is do something similar to that, where instead of giving a year for them to decide whether or not they're going to do it, we could just put in I know I'm looking at page 1, letter B, right at the bottom of the page. We could require a response to our outreach within 90 days. And then if we don't get if either they don't respond in 90 days, or if they say no within 90 days, then we would go to step 2. And that would then save 3/4 of a year on that. So
Yeah, I think that's better.
Is that a good compromise?
Yeah, I think that's a great compromise, because the fact of the matter is that we want to make sure that they respond.
Yeah.
One way or the other. The way it's written now, it seems like they got a whole year to respond, which I feel is disrespectful in a certain way, only word I could use. And so I like what they're adding here, Vice President Williams is able to that as well.
I think that's a good idea. I mean, the whole idea is to be able to, we still want to be cooperative and collaborative. We also just want to be able to, do the will of the voters that have put us in this position to be able to make sure that we are creating a responsive education system. I think the 90-day period allows us to better achieve that.
And I'll just tell you what our thinking was on it, because our concern was, let's say you're OSSI, and just try to think through OSSI's perspective on this. Let's say we send a request over and say, we want to do social studies standards. So we said, oh, 5 members send a letter over, say, please do social studies standards. And let's say that the fiscal year has just started. So let's say we're in the month of October.
Mhm.
And they say, we'd love to consider that, but we need resources to be able to do that. And we don't have budgeted in this fiscal year. So the concern would be, and this is play devil's advocate on my own recommendation, but the concern would be that if they say, we would love to consider that, but we don't control our own budget. Like the mayor proposes the budget, council approves the budget. So we won't be able to give you an answer whether we can do social studies standards until we find out whether those resources have been appropriated in the budget, which could be, June or July. So that's the one kind of
But I think
caveat.
that, to me, that still satisfies the requirement of the bill.
Being,
right?
having a
Right.
response.
Having a response,
Yeah.
right? And then we could then, respond accordingly, and also investigate, the budget process with the council or the
I
mayor's
agree.
office.
I agree, because what we're looking for is the response.
Yeah.
That you're not going to be responsive for a whole year or whatever the case may be, that you have 90 days, whatever that response may be, that you give a response within 90 days.
Okay, I'd love to work with you and obviously others on that language, but certainly I would love to put that in.
Yeah,
Representative Henderson.
just to say I'm supportive of that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think in terms of timeline, the resolution to me is in good shape and really builds exactly off of work that the board has already previously done. I feel like the legislation has a couple nuances.
Okay.
I want us to still be timely with that, but I don't want it to be rushed. Given that there is leadership is meeting with Chairman Mendelson and our meeting got pushed back to April, right? I think I want to propose a goal for us of being able to continue to vote on the resolution in March, and then to try and put the bill to schedule that for April, where it would still be timely enough. Because I don't see the chairman bringing up this issue for a hearing in the next 4 weeks as we're finishing performance oversight.
The only two education bills that are gonna be hearing are going to be, cell phones are gonna be hearing. There's also another one.
Attendance?
Mhm.
No?
I'll get, because Aaliyah sent it to me. But no, they're both in September, the same week, but different days.
I'll entertain thoughts. on that.
Just question for Representative Williams. Do you think we're that far away on the legislation?
No, I just don't I want to avoid what happened on the dais last month, so I think if we can commit to ironing this out in the next week and we have consensus, fine, but I think it's best to kind of talk about it verbally rather than just correspond via email. I don't know how others feel, or Representative Bess, Thompson, and Chang, and I want to make sure that we are,
Representative Chang is back on.
Oh, he is,
we're
but look at
clear.
that.
I
He hops on.
So,
Representative Fang, if you would like to join the conversation, we're talking about the legislation, on board authorities at the current time. I don't know if you had the time to listen in the interim time, but we welcome any comments you may have. And I believe Johnson Law, you kind of look like you had a question. I just want to make sure that I recognize you as well. If you want to be in the queue, ask a
Oh.
question.
No, sir, I think you all answered it. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, and I'm digesting and thinking things through. I appreciate the opportunity though. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. I actually don't think we're that far apart. I think there was a lot of, and we knew it kind of going into it, there was a lot of concerns with what we had happen in the last public meeting on HVACs and a lot of questions on it. Hence the reason we had the type of debate. I don't think that's the situation here. I think there's some fine tuning that needs to do, like we just discussed, 90 days here, things like that. I think we're very close. I think we're close enough. It's me, unless someone tells me different, where we can vote here to transmit with any fine tuning that needs to happen between now and the public meeting. That's my thoughts. I entertain other conversations on what other people think.
I would second what you just said on that, and I agree with Representative Henderson too. I think we've made a great deal of progress on this. And if it's not ready for prime time, then I'm certainly, since it is legislation, I'm certainly willing to just move a motion to postpone myself with the support of the members and give us the additional time. So I think if we agendize this and we find that, other issue crops up or there's some concern, then we just do a motion to postpone. I mean, that would, because it's been brought up several times, the incident with the air quality thing. I would have preferred a motion to postpone last time, because I don't. You could have made. Well, no, I could have made, but I was concerned it wouldn't be supported by the body. And I did not feel that was ready for prime time at all, so I had to then make amendments to something that was not my resolution. I mean, to point out, because this has been brought up a number of times, that got all the way to the public meeting with a provision in there saying that DGS should go around inspecting charter schools, which is absolutely not what we do at all. So it was not ready for prime time, but I didn't feel there was the appetite to just table it or postpone it. So our option then was to amend it. So I will make a commitment that my work here, if I don't feel that it's ready, I'll postpone it myself.
I'll interject at this particular point unless I see any other discussion on this. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question, and maybe I need to go back and maybe there's historical context to this. I'm just looking at this and I'm wondering, am I missing some foreshadowing or forecasting? Like, is this an incremental step that we're taking to get to a intended destination?
I will say that I don't think that this iteration of the board has had a discussion.
Okay.
I mean, that, there was a report, not even in the last iteration of the board, the board before that one, 2 boards ago.
Yeah.
They did a whole
I would
group
ask,
and recommendation and report. They did both meet with the public. It was a very detailed process. And that was even before the last iteration of the board.
to give a
Yeah.
succinct answer to your question, Representative Colson. Dr. Colson, there's not an incremental to get to a particular destination. We had a lengthy, as has been stated by the director, conversations, reports and everything like that. It was very contentious where we had a letter that was sent that was signed off by other members, well, not members, but agencies, representatives in education. And what you have before you now is we looked at the whole scope, and these are 3 things that we carved out of that report that we said we really should have these things. We feel very strongly about them. It was expressed that there was support for it. So these are the 3 items that we really focused on out of all the work that's happened over, as she just stated, 2 different iterations of the state board. So this is kind of like the destination. After going all the way around the block, this is it.
Thank you.
And I would say that too. I think the short answer in my view as an individual representative is like, it depends. I think that so I'm not opening that can of worms more broadly because I view this.
I appreciate that.
Yes, this is an incremental step that is a compromise that has political will at the council that
Right.
can improve the situation. So I think it's an opportunity that we should seize.
Understood. Thank you.
Just don't want to make it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. With that being said, and it's
We're
pretty
looking at
good.
time.
I appreciate that, Dr. Cole. With that being said, in the lively conversation that we've had again on this particular subject, I'm asking for a motion to transmit. Is that correct?
No, it's a motion to put on the
Yeah,
agenda.
a motion
of the
to-
public
Yeah,
meeting.
exactly, man. Thank you again for wording correctly.
But that's
So that
transmitted
being-
from the working session.
Yeah, from the working session. I am putting on the floor a motion to put on the agenda for the public meeting. I will ask for a second
Clarification?
clarification, Chancellor Law.
Is this the legislation or the resolution?
Let's.
You already
But-
voted, you've already voted to
Yeah.
put the resolution on.
But I thought y'all just said to table it and not put it on the.
That was proposed.
It was a
but-
proposal that if we get to the point and we did not have, clarification, so that he would take it off, he would make a motion to table it at the meeting itself. So basically what I'm asking that we put it on the agenda to be voted on, in the public meeting. And if he feels that it's not ready for prime time at that particular time, he would make a motion to take it off the agenda.
Got it, okay. Okay.
May I ask a question? This is actually to get the reaction for, because they'll probably see it anyway, but I also do want to, in the next couple of weeks, just reach out to Ossie and just say, hey, what are your thoughts on this too? Just to
We
kind of,
can bring it up with them on Tuesday.
okay, if you would.
Or Wednesday.
I mean, they may say we don't want any of this, but,
Yeah.
but just get a reaction from them.
Yeah,
If you would do that.
like a motion.
But I do now have, and I try to keep this in parliamentary correctness. I do have a motion. Did I receive a second?
No, for people.
No, you did not.
Second.
Okay, now I do have a second. I want to make sure that I did have a second. So I have a second from Representative Goulet. Madam Director, can you call the roll?
Representative. Okay.
Good timing.
Representative Chang, he's gone again. Okay. Representative Coaston.
Aye.
Representative Goulet,
Yes.
Representative Henderson,
Aye.
Representative Johnson Law.
Aye.
Rep-
Oh, you didn't hear me?
Vice President, no, I heard you.
Okay, I was like.
Vice President Reed.
Aye.
President Patterson.
Aye.
Commissioner, he is gone, yeah. The legislation entitled, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not wedded to that title.
We'll figure out a different title. This says state board authority will approve legislation.
Well, yeah, I've got, what's in the bill, it says DC State Board of Education Expanded Authority Amendment Act of 2025, but I have no pride of authorship in that title, just come up with something better if you want.
I appreciate that and we will
It's
do
on the
so.
agenda.
It is on the agenda. Now, I hope because of the hour, there are there was two additional things that were brought up.
I'll be very brief.
Okay.
Could I ask a quick question about this, the resolution and the legislation? I don't think it needs to move to the SAC to be proposed because it's,
No, but it's a resolution, it's still gotta go to the SAC.
so the
this week.
resolution would go to
Yeah.
the SAC next Monday. And so I'll work with a member to attend that on Monday. I just want to,
SAC, I'm gonna present it to you.
okay,
Thank you, sir.
sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to,
And I should say, just probably also check with Representative Thompson.
Okay.
All right, so the next thing on the agenda, special education report and special education facilities. Combined two from Representative Johnson Law and Representative Goulet as the next item.
Representative Goulet, you can go first to talk about the facilities part.
Okay, so on just the facility side of special education, because I'm gonna make a motion for it to be referred to, the C committee, consideration. Not on the larger issue of special education, which I think would go to Representative Henderson and, Representative, Rose Thompson's committee. So, the issue that I would like to be able to have referred to the committee is the issue of what is going on right now with the special education. There's not space currently for special education services in school settings. What we're doing is we're talking about cutting community-based organizations and eliminating that funding this year. It impacts Ward 3, it impacts Ward 4 with Lafayette, it impacts Ward 2, and it's a huge concern. So that's a facilities issue. The other side of the facilities issue is special education. Right now, the district's under a lawsuit on this, which is concerning. The angle that I'm concerned about specifically in Ward 3, and it's a concern elsewhere in the city, is whether we actually have appropriate space to give students an inclusive education. Ours is a just lack of space issue. I think in other areas of the city, it's a inappropriate space issue where the students are placed in settings that's not appropriate. So I think the ability to look at the student experience in terms of both special ed, the issue of trailers, the issue of pre-K, and trying to look at space issues, I think is really important. And it furthers the work that was done on the boundary study and student assignment, which I think you were on, Representative. So when we come together as a committee, we'll kind of take up that work
So your recommendation is to what you made?
just to send it to the student experience committee facilities. It has facilities in it. And obviously, we're not trying to get into the academic side of special education. What we're trying to do is look at space issues, student experience, and not the whole like curriculum issue of special ed, because that would not be our committee, and we will stay away from that.
So I'm in agreement with this. Is there any comments, or else I'm going to do that?
There's a question, but I didn't raise this to be added to the agenda because I thought you were gonna touch on it. So I'm in agreement, but I'm also asking for clarity on the cut of the funding for early education, because you mentioned that,
Yeah.
right? All right, so can someone assist me with clarity and understanding?
Yes, so back when we did the pre-K 3 and 4 legislation, we did not eliminate funding from CBOs, which are community-based organizations providing services. Naturally, many people shifted over to DCPS because when you, or charter schools, because if you selected a charter school or a public school that you wanted your children to go to, started them there at age 3, and went up through 5th grade. So it just became almost a natural progression. And then the CBOs, in large part, transitioned over to birth to 3 services, but not exclusively. Now, in areas where you don't have physical space, though, like you're experiencing with Lafayette, like we have all throughout Ward 3, like a number of schools in Ward 2, and there are other schools with waiting lists. Those are the only ones who have no pre-K 3, but others have limited pre-K 3. The CBOs are still performing the important role right now of pre-K services for those families. Now, a lot of those parents just felt like they got the rug pulled out from under them because there was talk, at least in this budget cycle, of eliminating funding for pre-K in the CBOs, which then means parents who, were planning, had already enrolled and applied for their kids to go to a CBO, in some cases now have nothing because they don't have it in their neighborhood school. Like Lafayette has no pre-K 3. So if you had a parent apply for pre-K 3 with Communikids, and now they're saying Communikids has no funding, they can't go get the slot in Lafayette because there's none exists. And I had this problem when my kids were there. I mean, the closest spot I got for pre-K was Ward 7. And that was because we applied through it and we had Ward 7. So that's the issue right now. And that's something we're going to look at in terms of the space issue. Obviously, the funding issue is very relevant. And I think what the hope would be is if we can put something out of committee, it will help advocate for keeping that funding, because that's the most important thing for me.
And the timing is correct. At
Yeah.
particular time, because we're right into the
Right in the
cycle.
budget season, and we gotta keep that funding.
Right. So the timing is
Yeah.
of the urgent matter.
But the motion is to move it to committee.
The issue is committee.
Right.
And then to.
Understood, I just wanted
Yeah.
to get clarity if that's okay.
And then we'll
Yes.
hopefully bring something to the next working session.
Council Law?
And Eric, for the record, you're talking about the pre-K, Representative Goulet, I'm sorry. You're talking about the pre-K enhancement and expansion program, PKE?
Yeah.
And is that local or federally funded or both?
Well, some of it was federally funded. I think they did some with stimulus dollars. I don't know. I can't tell you exactly what percent was done through that. But it's all locally funded now. Those COVID funds have run out.
Okay.
So I think we're talking solely local funds at this point.
Okay, thank you. I just want to clarify.
Nobody.
Okay. Thank you. With all answers, with all questions, I feel that I have been answered unless I see another raised hand. I'm going to, if you would state it again, the committee that's with the
The
recommendation.
C committee.
Okay, I am. Revert to that. Great, okay.
Now, special education.
Special education? Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry. I feel like something has happened here. So it was supposed to be all special education, but then it got separated back out, special education and childcare for PK facilities.
I think we merged my two issues together.
Yeah.
But hers
Which was facilities
separate.
and
Ah, so that's-
childcare.
Mine were
That's
both
okay.
connected to the facilities.
And I wrote
issue.
it down wrong as well. Yours was facilities and childcare. Yours is special education, which we are now speaking to.
Well, with the special
report.
ed component, just to be clear, the facilities component,
Was
Just looking
childcare
at
and special.
special ed. I didn't want to mix what Representative Law was going to be proposing, because that may go to a different committee if it focuses on the curriculum issues of special ed.
Go, ma'am.
Which goes into what I wanted to talk about, which was the report. And I don't know if this needs to go to a committee or Director Butler, what did you call it earlier? It was like, even if it's like on a Zoom, can we like deep
I mean,
dive
that's
into
special ed.
this?
You
A special,
have
it's a
a
special meeting.
meeting. It's the
Thank
one topic, well, all special meetings have to be one topic.
Okay, an expert to really dive into the report. Representative Henderson and I both talked about this in January because the report did come out in December. This was before all the hoopla. I hate to call it
Currently are experiencing.
I hate to call it hoopla or political reindeer games, that we are, that's my new word, y'all, political reindeer games, that we are experiencing now, but that this is just really important and really glaring. And unfortunately, people have been saying this for years. And it's just time. So, Mr. President, I am recommending with board approval that we have a special meeting to dive into this report and to bring in an expert to help facilitate the conversation. And if not, if we can find anybody, then I'll do it.
Is there other conversation on it? Because I'm ready.
Well, I would just, in consideration, would you all also consider the timeframe? Because I think it's not helpful just to say it should be a special meeting. I think it's helpful to say when it should occur, at least a time frame of months, so that like planning can happen on the part of the staff. So if you're recommending that a special meeting occur in the next 30 days, next 60 days, whatever it is, 2 weeks, whatever it is.
Director Miller, in these decisions, I do like to hear from you and the staff about your workloads and like what is a good time, so that way that way it can be implemented out. I know you were talking about budget. Oh,
Well, I can
Vice-
make a
Vice President
recommendation
Williams.
that we put it on the admin or on the leadership committee meeting, and then we can report back to the board after talking about it on Tuesday.
So what he's saying is that as far as the timeframe that you're requesting, that we can speak about.
Oh, discuss the timeframe.
The timeframe in the admin.
Yeah.
And you all
So
vote
what-
now on whether or not to have a special.
I can move it to say, yes, we're gonna have that one-time special meeting, but in the admin meeting, we'll decide on the timeframe.
It's not the admin meeting, at our leadership meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that, at the leadership meeting. Okay, yes.
So I have a recommendation, and I think it goes to the earlier discussion of a retreat. And it might make me want to accelerate. I was recommending fall retreat. This is such a pressing issue that maybe we'd want to accelerate it. I feel like if we're gonna look at another day for a retreat, that this should be an issue that we really take a deep dive into. And maybe even as you mentioned, bringing in an expert to help educate and inform us of this, which would be something that would be a good thing to do at a retreat. The reason I also like doing it at a retreat, and I don't think I'm getting myself in trouble with open meetings here or anything like that, but this is also, right now, potentially being litigated. Or not litigated, but we're under investigation. The city is under investigation officially. So I think having an open discussion of how everybody's feeling about this with an expert, but in a session where it's not already on the public agenda, I think is really beneficial, because I wouldn't want to say anything in here that could then come back to haunt the district, just as we right now are being investigated on this issue. So
Are you saying that you want to wait for a retreat?
I think we
Subject
should-
of a retreat, or are you saying move forward with it being a one topic special meeting?
I'm
What's
saying,
the recommendation?
I'm saying that I think we should accelerate the retreat, do this at the retreat, and do it sooner rather than later.
Okay. Now, I appreciate the second on that, first of all. We get there. My thing is this,
That's how
is
fast
that I love the fact that when I think about that and accelerating one in that retreat, I have to think about what you guys are doing. And then that retreat can be moved to a point that addresses the urgency of this, in that manner. So that's the next one, because retreats don't just pop up, you just don't throw them on the
Right.
calendar. There's a lot of planning that goes into that retreat, and we
Right.
talked a lot about all the things we want to encompass in that retreat, so.
Can somebody tell me when the budget oversight testimony is? I think it's on the shared calendar.
April 2nd, the budget comes out, so you're probably talking in the next.
No, but they've already
70
given us a
days.
schedule. No, well, we have to test out the budget oversight. We already have the days. But it's in-
You talking about this calendar you sent?
Yes,
The budget?
what
Can
is the
somebody,
budget oversight? Well, I usually do.
Wait, what is it?
Notification.
is it for us?
Yes, ours is on there. It should be under the budget.
Oh,
Oh, not-
Thursday, April
24th.
24th?
Okay, well, then that's fine. That's a long ways away. It gives us a little bit of time.
Okay.
Jesus.
March.
No, I say that to say, then it will probably be ideal to have a retreat at the beginning of April. Because if the budget testimony is not until the end of April. That gives us, I mean, we have time between now and then.
Mm,
And feel the staff, that would not be.
Yeah.
that's not too much.
I mean, it's, I don't know, we're doing a lot of planning, because if you all have agreed to take on like putting out the agenda and content. And we can, again, work with you all on facilitating, we just need to identify
I feel like a lot of it would just be the time.
logistics.
We just need space to be able to.
Yeah, time
identify
and
the
logistics,
report.
and again, so that's, it's, but I would recommend that this happen before, I think, before, like, sometime by the 12th, you've got to be done with this April 12th.
So what I'm recommending then is that instead of what was originally said as a special one topic meeting that we do, we will move this to a retreat. And that the retreat happens at the suggestion that I got from the director.
Before April 12th.
Before April 12th, and that this subject, as far as all the other logistics, will be decided in the. I'm trying to do the admin or leadership. Leadership meeting. Okay.
Can we do it April 12th?
I mean, that is up to y'all. I will tell you,
So
I won't be here after the 12th for 2 weeks.
it will, leadership in the next leadership meeting, as it has been, kind of referred to the leadership, will make the decision.
Well, on the date, you have to give availability of all the board members. I think that is going to be very. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I'm out the 5th and 6th.
So there's logistics that need to be worked out.
That is the main thing, is whether or not members are available.
Okay, and we're having leadership meetings for the, weekly, so there is time to make that decision. People check their calendar, see what they're available, propose some dates. And we will do that in between the next two, I would say, the next two leadership meetings, that it will make the decision, okay? That work? Okay, so, does that work for you, Council Law? Representative?
Yes, President Patterson, thank you all for taking up
No problem. I think it's
This-
very important.
this issue.
It's very urgent and important.
And
With that.
I would just say thank you all for a concrete decision. You know?
We're
I've made
getting
a
there.
commitment to
We're
push
getting
you all to
We're
just.
getting there.
But I like that though, because it helps, right? Because it helps to,
So, with that being said, okay, I don't have anything else. You're absolutely right. With all business being taken care of, old and new, thank you, members, for the time and engagement tonight. Members of the public can visit SBOE.dc.gov to learn how to submit and present testimony. All public witnesses must submit a written copy of their testimony to our staff for public record. The topic of our expert panel will be advanced coursework in our next meeting, the 19th. Members voted on this topic at the February working session. Seeing no other business before the state board, I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
I saw Ping's hand when I first, so he had a motion to adjourn was Representative Ping and seconded by
Second.
Johnson Law. Second. We adjourn.